Appropriation Main Estimates Act 2025, Product Regulation Meteorology Act 2025, Football Governance Act 2025, Norwich Livestock Market Act 2025. Right, we now come to questions. Secretary of State for Education, Lee Barron.
Number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you. And Mr. Speaker, may I take this opportunity to thank all those who work in our schools and wish them a well-earned break over the summer holidays. High and rising school standards are a non-negotiable for this Labour government as we seek to build a school system that enables every child to achieve and thrive. Our independent, expert-led curriculum and assessment review has found that the current system for primary assessments is broadly working well. However, we will of course take on board any recommendations from the review panel when it reports in the autumn.
Lee Barron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a recent survey by Young Minds, it was found that over a third of Year 6 pupils felt ill due to SATs, and over a quarter said it made them feel bad about themselves. 96% of head teachers say SATs harm well-being, and 95% doubt their accuracy. Our children and teachers are telling us that SATs are broken. So would the department consider a more holistic assessment approach that ensures the well-being of our children at such a young age?
Minister.
It's our ambition that all children get the chance to not just achieve at school, but also to thrive. SATs tests are carefully developed to ensure they are accessible, and it's clear that schools should not over-prepare children for the assessments at the expense of their well-being.
Right, Weir Hobbs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is so well known how damaging formal assessment can be on some children, and their well-being should be on the forefront of our minds. I know this from primary school teachers in my Bath constituency. Is it not really time that we completely scrap SATs?
Minister.
National curriculum tests and assessments are crucial to support schools in building strong foundations for children, regardless of background and prior attainment. We will continue to keep the matter under review, and of course children should not be made to feel stressed, but should be supported to achieve and thrive in any assessment at school.
Question number 2, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with permission, I will answer questions 2, 3 and 10 together. And with the summer holidays just around the corner, Mr. Speaker, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone working across education for all of their hard work this year. Improving the quality of teaching is the best way to drive up school standards, supporting every child to achieve and thrive. Through our plan for change, we will recruit an additional 6,500 expert teachers in our schools and colleges. With almost a 10% pay award, we are making good progress with over 2,000 more teachers in our secondary and special schools.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I congratulate the Secretary of State for the fact that the DfE are over a third of the way in recruiting those 6,500 teachers. A recent Public Accounts Committee report showed that schools with a high proportion of disadvantaged pupils experience the worst teacher shortages. So can the Secretary of State reassure me that extra effort will be put into recruiting and retaining teachers at all those schools?
I could give my honourable friend that assurance, and I thank him for all of the work that he does for his schools right across his constituency. Recruiting and retaining more teachers, particularly in the most disadvantaged areas, is absolutely critical to our opportunity mission. But I'm also delighted that initial teacher training acceptances are up 12% in secondary, positive progress that is being made, a 16% increase in maths and a 46% increase in physics. That is the change, Mr. Speaker, that this Labour government is delivering.
Juliet Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for her response and the Government's commitment to recruiting 6,500 new teachers. But as we know, dyslexic children tend to leave school or leave education disproportionately with lower attainment levels. They're overrepresented in the criminal justice system and often have low self-esteem. Much of this comes from their experience in the educational settings. So can the Secretary of State outline how she will ensure that the recruitment of new teachers will bring those in that can meet the education needs of dyslexic and neurodiverse children?
Secretary of State.
Mr Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for her question and for all of her work to support neurodiverse pupils both in Broxtowe and beyond. From September, thanks to this Labour Government's reforms, all new teachers will receive 3 years of evidence-based training, including significantly enhanced content on supporting children with additional needs. We know that there is much more we have to do, Mr Speaker, so that all of our students, including those with SEND, are able to achieve and thrive. And I look forward to discussing this further very soon with my honourable friend.
Christian Osborne.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. As a former teacher, I know that new school buildings are not only help student progress, but also encourage teacher retention. Can the Minister confirm that new school buildings are indeed part of this government's programme for change? And will she commit to visiting Bradfield's Academy in my constituency, a specialist SEND school, which is investing millions as part of the Rebuilding Schools for the Future programme?
Sarah Stay.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. I know he cares deeply about outcomes for children in Chatham and Aylesford and brings real experience to this House. He is also right to demonstrate the important role of the specialist sector. He mentions Bradfield's Academy. They've already secured a place in the school rebuilding programme, and with the approval of the Trust, I'd be delighted to arrange for me or one of my colleagues to come and visit and see for myself the brilliant work that they are doing.
Mr McVeigh.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, this government is hampering schools from recruiting new teachers. First, they hiked up the cost through the increase in employers' national insurance contributions, and then the money promised to state schools from charging VAT on private fees was actually spent on housing instead. So, can the Secretary of State tell the House how much the increase in employers' national insurance contributions will cost schools in total over this Parliament?
Mr Speaker, we are investing record sums in our state schools. The party opposite, however, want to take money out of our state schools to give tax breaks back to private schools. That tells you everything you need to know about their priorities.
Edward Morella.
The head teacher of Thomas Hardy School in West Dorset previously worked in a London school. He told me that in London he received nearly £10,000 per pupil, in West Dorset nearly £5,000. And yet the challenges of rural education are no less complex, not least in the recruitment of teachers. So what steps is the Minister taking to address the funding inequalities facing rural schools to ensure that all pupils receive the teaching they deserve?
Mr Speaker, we continue to keep all of these areas under review, and if the honourable gentleman would like to write to me with more information, I'd be happy to respond with more detail. But what I am clear about, Mr Speaker, is this government is investing more in education. We're turning around those year-on-year declines in teacher numbers with better pay, more support on workload and more money for our schools, including tackling child poverty. That is the difference that a Labour government is making for our country.
David Hines.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The government has tried to have it every which way on these elusive 6,500 extra teachers. Now, if the Labour manifesto had meant that only secondary teachers count, but it could be in any subject, presumably that's what it would have said. What it actually says is 6,500 new specialist teachers in key subjects. So will the Secretary of State enlighten us? What are those subjects?
Mr Speaker, I'd be very happy to do so. As the right honourable gentleman just heard, we're seeing big increases in initial teacher training acceptances in many of those key subjects like maths and science. But where it comes to the commitment that we have made, we have 60,000 fewer children in primary over the course of the last year. The right honourable gentleman, as a former holder of this office, would rightly expect that we target our efforts in areas of greatest need. And sadly, at the moment, in our primary schools, we're seeing a big decline in the number of children in primary, with the numbers forecast to fall by another 165,000 over the next few years. We are focusing our efforts where they are needed.
Shadow Minister Neil O'Brien.
Mr Speaker, the Secretary of State just said that they were turning around declines in teacher numbers. Under the last government, the number of teachers went up by 27,000. Under this government, it's down by 400. It is the opposite of the truth. Now, one thing that drives people out of teaching is poor discipline, and yet the government has abolished behaviour hubs despite the evidence that they were working. The government said they were abolished, put in place new behaviour ambassadors. They were supposed to be in place on the 4th of July, but the contract has now lapsed and the position's vacant. Why the delay on this vital issue, Mr Speaker?
This recruitment of teachers.
Mr Speaker, that was very shouty from the Shadow Minister. And you, as per usual, very negative about what we're seeing across education. We're turning around the problems that they left behind on teacher recruitment and retention. We are increasing attendance in our schools. We are improving behaviour. A challenge, I completely agree, is one that schools need support to deal with. We're putting more money back into parents' pockets and we are tackling child poverty. They've only got one policy, and that's to give a tax break to private schools.
Ms Twist.
Question for Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, this government is committed to improving mental health support for all children and young people. That is why we are providing access to specialist mental health professionals in every school by expanding mental health support teams so every child and young person has access to early support to address problems before they escalate.
Liz Twist.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And can I thank the Minister for his reply and also for last week's publication of the new RSHE curriculum guidance. Yeah. I was very pleased to see that secondary schools are now being asked to talk about suicide prevention in an age-appropriate way. Andy, Mike and Tim, the three dads walking, have campaigned very hard for this change over a number of years, and I'm pleased the government has worked with them to make this happen. Will he join me in thanking the three dads, and can he say how this will be implemented in schools so that we can help save young lives?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for her question and for the tireless work that she has done on these important issues in this place. We are grateful for the contribution of Three Dads Walking in developing the new RSHE guidance and pay tribute to their inspirational determination and courage shown in their work to raise awareness. The guidance contains new content about coping strategies for dealing with issues such as anxiety, but also covers issues such as loneliness and bereavement. It says schools should carefully consider how to address suicide prevention safely.
Graham Stewart.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Great leadership is critical to support of children to have a healthy mental condition. And will the Minister join me in congratulating Leon Myers, the head teacher of Swinemore Primary School, on the twice-repeated outstanding rating of that school, on his focus on traditional values, on endeavour, resilience and competitive spirit, and indeed on his recent MBE in recognition of the transformation of opportunity he provides to children across the Swinemore estate.
Minister.
I thank the right honourable member for his question. Absolutely pay tribute to the member of staff that he mentioned and all those that work across the education system to deliver life chances and improvements to all young people. I thank you very much for his hard work.
Justice Sutton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We know that timely access to mental health support is crucial. Earlier this month, the Education Select Committee released its report into children's social care. It recommended that the government establish mental health teams that are co-located between CAMS and children's social care so that looked after children can access specialist mental health support more easily. Would the Minister share any assessment the Department has made of this recommendation?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for her question and thank her for the hard work that she's undertaken on the Select Committee. She will know that we will deliver our commitment on mental health support teams in the course of the next few months and years. By 2026, we estimate that 60% of pupils in schools and learners will have access to MHSTs. I very much take forward the suggestion that she's made back to the Department.
Osman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Good mental health at school is sometimes bolstered by out-of-school support, especially for the most vulnerable children. Last week, I met Vicky and her team at Jigsaw Occupational Therapy in Burgess Hill, and I spoke to the families they help. Roughly a quarter of their work was supporting kinship and adopted children and helping them regulate following profound trauma. Vicky described the impact that on their children of the government's cuts to the Adoption and Special Guardianship Support Fund. She described it as heartbreaking. Can the Minister offer any words of comfort to Vicky and the families she helps?
Minister.
We are maintaining the support available to children to make sure that there's reasonable support in place and providing more funding to local authorities. This is a government that's committed to breaking down the barriers to opportunity so that every child can succeed and thrive. That's what we're getting on delivering.
Robin Swan.
Question number 5, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for his question and I'd like to take this opportunity to celebrate the great gains the Labour government has made through our plan for change. Since entering power, we've cut red tape, tilted the system towards young people and committed unprecedented investment for our skills system. We'll go further and faster with our post-16 education and skills strategy.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The apprenticeship levy is collected equally across the United Kingdom.
but unfortunately comes back to Northern Ireland under the Barnett consequential. Would the Minister look at an option where those employers who contribute into the apprenticeship levy can actually look at a system where they can draw it directly back to support apprentices within their employment and their companies?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for his question and for his thoughtfulness regarding the levy and the operation of it. As he is fully aware, skills is a devolved matter and funding is in the devolved administrations remains responsibility of that government. We will continue to engage with devolved administrations as we develop the level funded growth and skills offer for England.
Natalie Fleet.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I was recently lucky enough to visit Brigg Infant School in South Normanton. It is a gorgeous school full of really talented pupils and dedicated staff. However, they do have a problem. 4- and 5-year-olds are being taught in a prefab building that is not fit for purpose. I love to see the way that we invest in education, but they were let down by the previous government. Will the Secretary of State agree with me that they deserve a classroom that is fit to be taught in, and will she look at this case?
I thank my honourable friend for her very thoughtful question regarding the prefabs, and absolutely we do have a plan to build, and I will take up this matter further with the appropriate minister.
Neil O'Brien, Shadow Minister.
Mr Speaker, before the election, Labour said that they would allow employers to take 50% of their apprenticeship levy money and spend it on other things. But since the election, different ministers have said different things about whether this is still happening or not. And the Skills Minister said it would all depend on the spending review. But of course, the spending review was now a while back. So are businesses going to be able to take out 50% as Labour promised, or not?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for his question. Obviously, we're a government that really continues to invest in education. We have flexibility that is available, and we have foundation apprenticeships, we have shorter apprenticeships, and we're absolutely investing in young people to get them into the right jobs.
Order, please. Front bench. We can't... The Minister will answer the question as he see fit. It may be frustrating, but we'll carry on. Catherine Atkinson.
6, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
With permission, Mr Speaker, I'll answer questions 6 and 12 together. Excellent further education colleges are a key building block of the Government's opportunity and growth missions. The Government is committed to improving the condition of schools and colleges in England and will invest nearly £3 billion per year by 2034 to 2035, rising from £2.4 billion in 2024-25.
Catherine Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The oldest surviving locomotive roundhouse in Britain is in Derby, and what was once at the forefront of Victorian engineering is now a cutting-edge learning environment for local young people who will build the homes of the future. But the site is full to bursting. Derby College needs more space. So would the Minister agree with me that if it became a construction technical excellence college, it could extend its site, it could increase its capacity in brickwork, carpentry and joinery by 50% and teach more students the construction skills we so desperately need?
Minister.
Applications to become construction technical excellence colleges closed on the 4th of July. We look forward to informing successful candidates in due course. In addition, £375 million of capital investment will be invested between 2026 and 2030 to support post-16 capacity to accommodate the additional learners entering the system.
I know that the Education Minister will agree with me there. Next, we have two of this country's most outstanding FE institutions. Exeter College, currently rated outstanding by Ofsted and is strong in its approach to meeting the skills needs of our area. The first time college has achieved both. And Exeter Maths School is also rated outstanding and gives students from across the southwest the opportunity to specialise in maths, physics and computing. But as my colleague has said previously, this success comes with its own challenges. Both are bursting at the seams and in need of capital investment to allow them to expand and to continue their exceptional work. Does the Minister agree with me also that Exeter College could also be an exceptional candidate to become a construction technical excellence college for the South West? And will the Minister agree to meet with me to discuss the ways in which we can support these changes?
I'd like to join my honourable friend in recognising the success of Exeter College and Exeter Maths School, which are both outstanding. As my honourable friend will know, the Government has announced capital funding to improve condition and accommodate rising student numbers as we hope to replicate the success of these settings across the country.
Tim Farrell.
Mr Speaker. The sixth form of the Lakes School near Windermere provides further education for young people within the Central Lakes. It's in a building which is beyond fit for purpose and is now ready and needing a rebuild. It's also happened to be built on the site where the children, the Windermere children, who survived the death camps in 1945 and were brought to be rehabilitated on the shores of Windermere, where they were first settled. In this 80th anniversary of their arrival, would he agree to meet with me and local people for us to look at a rebuild of the school and at the same time a memorial to the Windermere children so we can honour their memory and support the children of the future too?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for his question. Ensuring that schools and colleges have the resources and buildings that they need is a key to our mission to break down barriers to opportunity and ensure that every child can succeed and thrive. As always, very happy to meet with my honourable friend.
James Shannon.
Mr Speaker, can I thank the Minister very much for his answers as always. The Honourable Lady for Derby North referred to construction sector. Is it time, Minister, to perhaps think outside the circle of what we normally do in relation to doing deals with partnership and construction companies, for instance, to ensure that the opportunity to work with them to improve the education college estate, at the same time make people available and knowledgeable for the jobs that they do in future life, whether it be in construction or whatever it may be. Time for partnerships, perhaps doing something just a wee bit different.
Minister.
He's absolutely right. The construction sector is fundamental to the UK economy, and that is why this government's industrial strategy includes a construction sector deal. We've committed £625 million to supporting construction skills training, and the funding includes capital investment through the establishment of technical excellence colleges and the creation of an employer match funding pot worth £80 million. With permission, Mr Speaker, I will answer questions 7 and 22 together. Our landmark strategy, Giving Every Child the Best Start in Life, sets out plans to deliver Best Start family hubs, to make access to early education easier and more affordable, and to improve quality in settings and reception classes. This is backed by £1.5 billion over the next 3 years, and government spending on the funded hours will reach £9 billion next year and will continue to rise over Parliament.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Minister for joining me in Kirwin Primary School in Plaistow recently to see the excellent work they're doing on early years education. What he heard from parents is the struggles they often face through serious economic and housing hardship. Can my honourable friend assure my constituents that the government will be looking at communities like mine where housing and poverty create serious challenges for families to make sure that all children, no matter of their circumstances, get the best possible educational start in life?
I thank my honourable friend for our excellent visit last week to the Kirwell Primary School, where I saw some excellent work in practice on supporting children's speech and language. To deliver for some of our most vulnerable children and families, our spending review commitments are a down payment on the child poverty strategy, building on expanding free breakfast clubs, expanding free school meals, boosting national minimum wage and capping universal credit deductions through fair repayment rate.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Sure Start, which was created by the last Labour government, boosted attainment, improved health outcomes and increased long-term earnings. However, under the Conservatives, more than 30 children's centres were closed in Derbyshire, and today Derbyshire doesn't have a single family hub. What action will the government take to ensure that more young children in Derbyshire can once again access support during their early years?
Minister.
It was also a pleasure to visit my honourable friend's constituency recently. He is a real champion for children and young people. We will fund Best Start family hubs in every local authority, including in Derbyshire. We estimate this expansion could reach 500,000 children across the country. Best Start family hubs will be open to all, based in disadvantaged communities where they are needed most.
Munira Wilson, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Could I start by joining ministers in thanking our school and college staff up and down the country for their dedication and wish them a happy and restorative summer holidays. Mr Speaker, children with special educational needs starting reception last year were over a year behind their peers, according to the Education Policy Institute. And staggeringly, those with an education, health and care plan were already over 20 months behind. This is the widest gap that EPI has recorded since it started monitoring in 2013. Given the importance of the early years in narrowing the gap, And it's crucial that we give every child the help they need as soon as possible. So could the Minister confirm how much of the £760 million for SEND transformation announced in the spending review will be going towards early identification and intervention?
Minister.
I thank the Liberal Democrat spokesperson for her question. This government is committed to ensuring excellence for everyone so that children have the support, skills and opportunities that they need, and that starts in early years. We are actively working with parents and experts on solutions, including more early intervention to prevent needs from escalating. Any changes we make will improve support for children and parents, stop parents from having to fight for support and protect effective provision currently in place.
Ms. Well. Hey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm grateful to my honourable friend for raising this important question. Labour is providing £1 billion more for high needs budgets and also providing councils with £740 million of capital funding to improve support for children with SEND in specialist and mainstream schools. This investment will lay the foundation for the better system that children with SEND need. Working with experts, we will set out our plans in the Schools White Paper in the autumn.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last government left behind a SEND system that was failing children and families. Parents were made to fight for support, with EHCPs denied or delayed and vital services taken away. Tory cuts to early year support, rising poverty and extreme deprivation in Blackpool, as well as the pandemic hitting our children harder than most, have all combined to deepen the crisis facing our most vulnerable young people. What steps is the Education Secretary taking to ensure children in disadvantaged communities like mine, where the need is high and support often falls short, receive the targeted SEND support they urgently require?
Minister.
My honourable friend is a powerful champion for his constituents and for Blackpool, and he is right that far too many children are not currently getting the support that they need in order to thrive. Early intervention is key, more support at the earliest possible point to identify where children might be struggling and to make sure that they get the help they need. That's why I was very proud, Mr. Speaker, to announce to this House that, building on the proud Labour legacy of Sure Start, we'll be rolling out Best Start family hubs to make sure that we have better family support services in every part of our country, including in his community.
Dr. Andrew Merson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Secretary of State knows that out-of-county placements are very expensive and highly unsatisfactory, both for pupils and for families. Will she therefore confirm that the excellent news that we had last year, that there would be a new SEND school built in Westbury at Biffin Park, will go ahead to the advantage of children and, importantly, their families, and assure me it's not going to be cancelled in the proposals that she's alluded to?
Mr. Speaker, I will happily write to the right honourable gentleman in relation to his constituency case. We are looking carefully at all of the proposals that were put forward that were inherited as we came in as a new government. But the assurance I can give him is that through the spending review we secured additional investment, not just for revenue funding, but also for capital funding, to make sure we are creating the specialist places that are needed, both in mainstream but also in the specialist sector, who have an enormous amount of expertise. And sadly, I've heard far too many cases of the kind that he describes, where children are being forced to travel considerable distances away from their local community and away from their friends because of an absence of specialist places. We are determined to improve this.
Alex Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Secretary of State join me in congratulating the staff, pupils and governors at Henry Tyndale Community School on the official opening today of their new park campus in Aldershot, a vital new facility for students with complex learning difficulties aged 4 to 19. This outstanding school is named after Henry Tyndale, who gave 2 decades of tireless service as a volunteer, fundraiser and friend to children with the greatest difficulties, and whose legacy continues to shape the school's inclusive spirit. What steps is the government taking to support the creation of more schools like Henry Tyndale, so that children with SEND needs in my community and beyond have access to the high quality specialist environments that they deserve?
Mr Speaker, absolutely, I join with my honourable friend. She is right to draw attention to the amazing work in the specialist sector, the tremendous expertise, knowledge and passion that so many people bring to supporting children with some of the most complex needs. It's why that at the forefront of all of our minds as we bring forward any reform to the SEND system is how we deliver better outcomes for children with SEND. That will be our guiding principle. It must be our guiding principle. So alongside better mainstream inclusion, we will of course make sure that there is the specialist provision necessary for the children who need it.
Thank
you, Mr Speaker. I've heard from and met with numerous parents in my constituency with children with special educational needs, all frustrated with the way that the system currently works. And I welcome the Secretary of State saying that she wants outcomes for children to be at the centre of reforms. But for instance, recently a parent contacted me. She has got an EHCP for her child. That helps them to be in mainstream education. She said she felt absolute fear and horror when she heard about potential government plans for reform, the risk of her son losing the ability to stay in the school that has been an absolute godsend for him, in her words. Can she assure parents that the reforms that she's planning will not take away support that children currently have and will ensure that every child has the support they need to genuinely thrive?
Mr Speaker, I can be clear that children with SEND have a legal right to additional support and Labour will always protect that. But I would just say to the Honourable Lady, all of us have a responsibility in how we approach this, and we do have a responsibility not to cause undue alarm amongst parents who are currently experiencing a system that isn't working, that is too adversarial. But I do believe that a better system will be delivered. We can make sure children get early, timely support that is much more effective and focused on their outcomes. And the plans that we will set out later this year will be shaped by all of the conversations with the parents she describes that I too have had with experts, with school leaders and campaigners to make sure that we do get this right.
Shadow Minister Neil O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Parents are getting in touch with MPs across the country to ask if existing special needs support will be continued under the planned reforms. The Schools Minister has said that the government won't be removing effective support. But what does this word effective mean? Who will judge what is effective and on what basis? And why won't the government just guarantee that all children will keep the support that they've currently got?
Mr Speaker, as I just said in response to the Honourable Lady, children with SEND have a legal right to additional support. We will not just protect it, we will improve it. We will deliver better outcomes and support for children with SEND. And I have to say, Mr Speaker, I don't know how he's got the brass neck to stand there and ask that question after the system that they left behind, described by the last Education Secretary as lose, lose, lose. It is for that reason that we deal with so many questions about this topic every time we gather for this session of questions, because what we have at the moment isn't working by any objective measure. Children being failed, parents being failed, and it falls to this Labour government to deliver the better system of support that all of our children with SEND desperately need.
Dr Neil Hudson.
Number 9, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
With permission, Mr Speaker, I'll answer question 9 and 20 together. Mobile phones have no place in schools. Government guidance is clear that schools should prohibit the use of devices with smart technology throughout the school day. Research from the Children's Commissioner shows that 99.8% of primary schools and 90% of secondary schools already have policies restricting their use of mobile phones.
Neil Hudson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Many of the young people that I meet in schools across Epping Forest are very clear. When they are at school, they agree with their local school policy of restricting mobile phones. But sadly, this government has repeatedly refused our Conservative calls to protect our children with a national ban on phones in schools, even voting against it, Mr Speaker, when bodies like UNESCO and the OECD are crystal clear about the negative impacts of phones on young people's education. When will this government listen to the evidence and our school leaders and support a ban on smartphones in schools for the sake of our young people's education and their mental health?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I've said phones shouldn't be out in schools. Heads have the powers to enforce that. The party opposite backed those measures themselves. If they felt they need to go further, they had 14 long years to do so.
I'm done.
Thank you, Mr
Mr. Speaker. Last Thursday, I could feel the fear in a hall full of primary school parents in Totnes as they listened to campaigners going through the evidence about the impact of smartphones on kids at secondary school. There's a clear safeguarding issue around kids seeing videos showing hardcore pornography and violence. So I'm pleased that Tina Graham, the head of Kingsbridge Community College, has just announced a smartphone-free policy from September to protect children, which means no phones in school at all, except for reasonable adjustments. A much better policy than the not seen, put it in your bag policy, which most schools follow. In light of these safeguarding concerns, where every child is only as safe as the least safe phone in school, could the Minister explain why he won't do the one thing that could transform our children's mental health, physical health and school attainment and direct all schools to go smartphone-free?
Please, it's not fair. I've got to get others in. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think her question actually demonstrates that mobile phones have no place in schools, and there's already guidance in place to reflect that. The mobile phones in schools guidance is clear, and schools should prohibit the use of devices with smart technology throughout the school day, including during lessons and transition and breaks. We expect all schools to take steps in line with this guidance to ensure mobile phones do not disrupt pupils' learning. If pupils fail to follow these rules, schools should have the power to confiscate devices.
So, Secretary of State Laura Trott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the other place, Baroness Smith of Malvern, a Department for Education Minister, said, and I quote, "There is no clear scientific consensus on a negative impact from screen time and social media use on the mental health and neurological or functional development of children and young people." Mr. Speaker, I fundamentally disagree. There is overwhelming and extensive evidence of the harm caused. But I want to know the government position. Does the Minister agree with his ministerial colleague on this, or does he agree with me?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, last year her government claimed that action on mobile phones was prohibiting in schools and that the guidance meant a consistent approach across all schools. Their words. So in backing the Tory government's measures, was the member wrong then or wrong now?
Gareth Snell.
Number 11, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And well, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all post-16 providers and all staff for their tireless work over the last academic year, and indeed wish them a restful summer break. Following the autumn budget, this government made available over £400 million extra planned spending on 16 to 19 education in the financial year 2025 to 26. Since then, an additional £190 million for 2025-26 is available to respond to 16 to 19 demographic growth and other pressures on the system, creating opportunities for young people to succeed.
Gareth Snell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I draw the House's attention to my register of interest, where I'm a governor of the Stoke-on-Trent Sixth Form College and chair of the APPG on sixth forms. Can I thank the Minister for her answer and say that the additional capital available for post-16 providers is very welcome. The Stoke-on-Trent sixth form is seeing huge increase in interest around science, healthcare science and computer science. These are subjects that are mission critical to the delivery of the government's ambitious programmes. But can I ask the Minister when this capital will be available so that my sixth form and others around the country can build those high-quality learning environments for those young learners?
Minister.
Yeah, I thank my honourable friend for mentioning his fantastic City-on-Trent Sixth Form College, and I would like to reassure him and other members that this government is committed to ensuring that there is a place in education or training for every 16 to 18-year-old who wants one, and details on the £375 million of capital investment to accommodate additional learners entering the system will be announced in due course.
Member put together.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A report presented to the APPG for Care Experienced Children and Young People revealed that over 4,000 young people in care either moved placements or left care during their A-level exam period. What steps is the Minister taking to ensure schools and colleges are properly equipped to support care experienced students facing such instability at a crucial point in their education?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for her thoughtful and provoking question, really advocating for care leavers to make sure they have that durability that they need at schools, to make sure that they have that seamless experience. And I would just like to reassure that care leavers who start an apprenticeship are entitled to 3,000 bursaries, and local authorities must provide a 2,000 bursary for care leavers who go on to universities. And just to say that this government is extremely concerned about the education not being broken for care leavers and making sure we support them in every which way we can.
Lincoln John.
Question number 13, sir.
Minister.
With permission, Mr Speaker, I'll answer questions 13 and 17 together. We are engaging extensively with families and experts as we seek to improve support for children with special educational needs and disabilities. We've invested £1 billion into high needs budgets and £740 million into creating more specialist places. We're rolling out schemes from the PINS programme to Inclusion 2028 that are laying the groundwork for long-term reform. We are building a system where every child can achieve and thrive.
Good job.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Minister for that answer. On Friday, I got the opportunity to visit the outstanding Springfield Primary School in my Spelthorne constituency. They have 500 pupils, 30 of whom have EHCPs and 6 applications currently in. Can the Minister reassure the parents of those 6 and the many, many parents across the country that while this review into EHCPs is going on, that local education authorities are not going to slow-roll existing applications or indeed fail them as a default in order for them to go to tribunal and try and beat the clock?
Minister.
We've not yet made decisions on the future of education and healthcare plans, but we are extremely focused on strengthening the support system so that every child can receive timely, high-quality help. And we will set out further details on our approach to special educational needs in the White Paper this autumn. And in the meantime, obviously, children should be getting the support that they need, and we're putting in the groundwork so that more children can have that.
Lizzie Collins.
We know early intervention is most effective for children with SEN, and too many children in my constituency of Morecambe and Loonsdale have been let down in this respect. Lancashire, though, is for the first time receiving funding for Best Start hubs. So I'm wondering if the Minister could tell me how will this in particular improve early support for those children?
Minister.
So as I said, we are already investing in supporting children and their families. We're investing in Best Start family hubs, as the Honourable Lady mentioned. We want to make sure that all children have access to a family service professional that's trained to support inclusion, that can identify where children have additional needs ahead of starting school and can support parents to navigate services too.
Dr Ben Spencer.
Question 14, please, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Ensuring schools and colleges have the resources and buildings they need is key part of our mission to break down the barriers to opportunity to give every child the best start in life. For this specific project, I can confirm the Department is in the process of finalising the feasibility study, and we expect to procure the works later this year. Until that process is complete, we will not be able to advise on the length of the construction programme. However, positive progress continues to be made in collaboration with the Trust.
I thank him for his answer. Could he clarify as to whether the Magna Carta School in Egham is going to have a full rebuild due to RAC, or just the science and arts block will be rebuilt? And would you meet with me to discuss this and the work going forwards of such a fantastic local school?
Yeah, very happy to meet with the Honourable Member.
Andy Mackney.
15, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
This government is committed to ensuring every child can access the tools they need to achieve and thrive. We did inherit a challenging workforce picture from the previous government, which is why we are committed to recruiting an additional 6,500 teachers. We're backing teachers. We're restoring teaching to a highly valued profession. There's no doubt that technology has a key role to play in driving high and rising standards at school. However, the most important factor for high quality education is having an expert teacher at the front of the classroom.
Speaker, in Rosendale, the Academy Trust that runs our Stott School Valley Leadership Academy recently announced plans to introduce a virtual teacher for top set maths. This approach has understandably raised a lot of concerns, and I've been working with the Trust to make sure it's designed in the pupils' best interest. As a result, I've been assured this will be a temporary measure, that there will be a qualified maths teacher in the room to provide additional support, and an appropriate range of adjustments will be made for SEND pupils. But looking forward, I remain concerned that without safeguards, the use of virtual teachers may become a default cost-saving measure to address recruitment challenges. So would the Minister share her view on how can we ensure such approaches are always designed in people's best interests.
Stir, come on, Andy.
Technology has the potential to enhance time efficiency for teachers, to reduce workload, to improve student engagement and attainment, but it cannot replace the valuable relationship between teachers and pupils, because we know high-quality teaching has the biggest impact on a child's educational outcomes. School leaders rightly have the autonomy to make decisions on staff deployment, and they are best placed to make decisions on the needs of their pupils.
Wilstone.
16, please, Mr. Speaker.
Safeguarding children in schools is a priority for this government, and schools have a critical role to play in protecting children and keeping them safe. Departmental guidance is clear. Schools and colleges should have a policy and emergency plan in place to manage and respond to security-related incidents.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for the response and the recent meeting. Given that we've had 2 fake bomb threats in Swindon, which has obviously had a negative impact on my schools, will the Minister assess the current guidance so we can have lessons learned from what has happened in Swindon so we can improve it for the future? Thank you.
Minister.
I'd like to thank my honourable friend for the meeting last week. As I explained to him then, the DfE publicises the protective, security and preparedness guidance which sets out how schools should respond to bomb threat and how to embed a security culture. Act for Education e-learning is also available to all school staff and includes information on what to do in the event of a bomb threat.
Alison New.
Question number 18, please, Mr. Speaker.
This government has given a long-term commitment to improve the condition of schools and colleges. We're investing almost £20 billion in the school rebuilding programme through to 2035, delivering rebuilding projects at over 500 schools across England. This includes 8 schools in Scarborough and Whitby, with a further 250 schools to be selected within the next 2 years. We are also investing almost £3 billion per year by 2035 in capital maintenance for schools and colleges, rising to £2.4 billion this year.
Mr. Speaker, Springhead Sixth Form in Scarborough has been rated outstanding for the education and care they provide for students with complex special educational needs and disabilities. The staff are amazing, but the Sixth Form is housed in an old and unsuitable building. When I visited Springhead, I saw one student being tutored in a modified corridor due to overcrowding. Can the Minister set out what steps he is taking to ensure that pupils with special educational needs are educated in school buildings that can match those needs?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we have also increased funding to improve the condition of schools to £2.1 billion for 2025-26, which includes over £7 million for North Yorkshire to invest in its maintained schools, including Springhead. North Yorkshire has also been allocated £6.8 million for 2025-26 to provide suitable and accessible school places for pupils with SEND who require alternative provision.
A number of years ago, Bilton Woodfield, a school in my constituency, Harrogate and Knaresborough, closed. It's been rebuilt as a specialist school for children with autism. It was meant to open in September last year, but has been delayed until September this year. Will the Minister meet with me and confirm whether or not it will open on time this September?
Quick meeting, yes.
Very happy to meet the honourable member.
David Dennis. Sir David Dennis.
Given the lose-lose-lose system the last government left behind, in their own words, we are working very hard to reform the system so that every child can achieve and thrive, and any reform will be guided by how we improve support for children with SEND, and there will always be a legal right to additional support which this government will protect.
Sir David Dennis.
In view of that answer, Mr. Speaker, I'll quote the Secretary of State. She was saying earlier that the system is so distorted that the financial allocations do not reflect the real needs of the children. That means that local authorities have huge deficits just by trying to do their job, no fault of their own. So when she comes up with her new policy in the autumn, will she commit to writing off those deficits so those authorities can do the job in the future?
Minister.
So as part of our reforms, we will commence a phased transition process which will include working with local authorities to manage their SEND system, including their deficits, alongside an extension to the statutory override until the end of 2027-28. We're going to set out more details about the plan as to how we're going to support local authorities with both historic and accruing deficits accumulated under the last government and since, due to the appalling situation that we inherited.
Jen Craft.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. On Friday, I had the absolute privilege of spending a good few hours with SEND parents in my constituency, talking about what doesn't work under the current system, what we would like to see changed. There was a lot of frustration, there were a lot of tears, they were very honest and open about their upset at the current system. But there was also a lot of ideas and a lot of determination to make change happen so that those that come after us don't have to go through the same stress and anxiety that we do as STEM parents. So will the Secretary of State guarantee that the voices of parents, of carers, of families will be integral to forming the school's white paper that is due out in the autumn?
Minister.
I can give the Honourable Lady that reassurance. I know that she is incredibly passionate about improving the SENS system, which she shares with this government, and we're not only determined to restore the trust of parents by ensuring schools and local areas are able to better identify the support of children, but we are working with parents and families to create that system which we know will improve outcomes for children and their families.
Peter Princely.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 21.
Mr. Speaker, Labour is rebalancing opportunities towards young people, giving them the skills they need to get on. Apprenticeship starts, achievements and participation are all up under this Labour government. From August, we are introducing foundation apprenticeships to support young people into careers in critical sectors such as construction and health and social care.
Dr. Peter Prince.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for her answer. Now, I feel sure that she is aware that the outstanding West Suffolk College in Bury St Edmunds, with more than 10,000 enrolled students, is part of the outstanding Eastern Education Group under the leadership of Nikos Savas. Would she agree that the West Suffolk College is an outstanding candidate to be awarded the status as the Construction Technical College of Excellence for the East of England, boosting skills in construction, crucial for the new West Suffolk Hospital, and the Sizewell C construction site, the largest construction site in Europe?
Yes.
I thank my honourable friend for his questions and indeed his lobbying, and I draw his attention to Labour's technical excellent colleges that will be crucial to our plans to rewire our school system to unlock opportunity for our young people and drive growth for our country. He is right that West Suffolk College is an outstanding provider, and I'm sure the college's remarkable achievements will be considered as our technical excellent colleges are indeed selected.
Dr. Caroline-Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, degree apprenticeships are great for social mobility and for matching skills to the economy. I'm such a fan of them that I created one in my parliamentary office. Would the Secretary of State like to take the time to congratulate Jack Kellis, who's achieved not just a distinction in his apprenticeship, but a first-class honours degree from the University of Lincoln, and will she do all she can to ensure that more people have opportunities to do degree apprenticeships and achieve the same success as Jack?
Yes.
I thank the honourable member for sharing that wonderful achievement of Jack Callis, and if I'd like just extend to her to say that level 6 apprenticeships are a core part of our offer and we continue to fund them.
We come to topicals. Lee Anderson.
Number one, please, sir.
State.
Mr. Speaker, before I make my topical statement, with your permission, I'd like to address last week's tragic incident in Minehead. I'm sure all members will join me in offering our support and prayers to all of those affected by the Minehead Middle School bus crash last Thursday. Our deepest sympathies and condolences go to all of those affected at the school and in the wider community, and particularly the family and friends of the 10-year-old boy who tragically lost his life. Most of those injured have now been released from hospital. Support has already been put in place for those affected, and this will continue into the summer break and beyond. And I extend my thanks to everyone involved in coordinating and delivering this vital help. I also want to pay tribute to the emergency services for their incredible response in the most challenging of circumstances. Mr. Speaker, this Labour government believes that children growing up in our country deserve the very best start in life. That's why we're investing nearly £1.5 billion over the next 3 years to transform early years and family services. This will include £500 million for rolling out Best Start family hubs in every local authority, honouring the proud legacy of Sure Start and ensuring that every family can thrive regardless of postcode or income. Labour is building back the crucial family services that were decimated by the Tories, providing high-quality support to parents, babies and children from pregnancy onward, and we're only just getting started.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I visited the Outward Academy School in Kirkby in Ashfield. This school has gone from double special measures to good in just a matter of 3 years under the leadership of the Outward Grange Trust. So would the Secretary of State please say a big thank you to the Trust and the staff for helping turn this school around and giving the children in my town the education that they deserve.
Mr. Speaker, like him, I welcome the hard work of our teachers, leaders and support staff, and I'm always pleased to hear about improvements in standards. This government is ambitious for every child, and our new RISE teams are working across schools to bring together leaders with experience in turning schools around. But also to his constituents, what I'd say is that thanks to this Labour government, thousands of children will now benefit from free school meals. The new breakfast club that is opening in his constituency will be a big boost to his constituents, and we're delivering new funding for Best Start family hubs. That is the difference that a Labour government is making for his constituents.
Andrew Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It remains a reality that you can take a GCSE in Russian in this country, but not Ukrainian. I have resolved to do my part to help because I believe we should have a Ukrainian GCSE available to all. And as it is a topical question, I bring some encouraging news. I've written to all the exam boards. It will be, Mr. Speaker, absolutely. Topical and quick. And AQA have reported back to me that they are very open to this, but they need to see evidence that we have enough Ukrainian-speaking teachers willing to teach the subject and to mark the papers. The good news is that with support from parliamentary colleagues, I have found 250 teachers who can do just that. So would my right honourable friend agree with me that it should now just be a matter of time before we have a Ukrainian GCSE available to all?
Minister.
My honourable friend clearly knows that the decision to create any new GCSE is made by an independent awarding organisation, but I've also met with the Ukrainian Education Minister. I know how important this issue is to Ukrainian families living in the UK and others. And the Secretary of State has written to the awarding organisations to encourage them to create a Ukrainian GCSE, and I am now well aware of his interest in this issue, and I'm more than happy to convey it also.
Laura Trott, Shadow Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I completely support the Secretary of State's opening words, and my thoughts and prayers are with all of those affected by the devastating incident. Now, Mr. Speaker, government documents state that the first step in achieving its primary school readiness mission is its target to recruit 6,500 teachers. The Secretary of State claims at the last oral she's always been clear the 6,500 teachers are in secondary schools. So, if this is true, can the Secretary of State explain how secondary school teacher recruitment contributes to improving primary school readiness for 4-year-olds?
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, this Labour government is delivering the teachers that are desperately needed right across our schools. We were left behind a terrible crisis where it came to recruitment and retention, but this Labour government knows that improving standards in our schools requires the best possible teachers available to teach all of our children. It's why we delivered a pay award. It's why we're making sure we're tackling all of those issues around workload as well. But we're getting on and delivering the plan for change. The Right Honourable Lady always comes here with the same relentless negativity week in, week out. We are delivering new free breakfast clubs, free school meals, cheaper uniform, high quality childcare and more apprenticeships. That's the difference a Labour government is making.
Mr. Speaker, this is farcical. Will the Secretary of State finally admit that the original 6,500 teacher pledge did include primary school teachers, and they are now abandoning that pledge because the reality is, according to the government's own website, that there are 400 fewer teachers than last year?
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, there are 60,000 fewer children in primary schools this year. I know the Right Honourable Lady was at the Treasury, so I'd expect a bit more where it came to her maths. It would be nonsensical to recruit even more primary school teachers in a situation where we have falling roles. We are focusing our efforts where they are needed, and that's why I'm delighted that we're seeing big increases in secondary maths teachers, in secondary physics teachers, in secondary STEM teachers as well. Right across the board, big increases. That's what Labour is delivering.
Danny Beales.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I had the pleasure of hosting the Outcomes First group in Parliament, a group of specialist SEND schools who presented their proposals for fixing the broken SEND system, including supporting more children in mainstream education, supporting collaboration between schools and upskilling teachers with their expertise. Would the Minister agree with me these are exactly the sort of changes that are needed to fix the SEND system, and will she agree to meet with me and the school in my constituency to learn more?
Minister.
Indeed, we are building a reform system where children and young people's needs will be identified early so that evidence-based support can be provided at the earliest opportunity. I was also recently pleased to open Benton House in my constituency, a special school also run by the Outcomes First group earlier this year, and it was great to see such a well-resourced facility supporting children with complex needs. I'd be delighted to hear more about the work in his constituency and the proposals.
Can I just say to everybody, please, we've got to try and get as many as possible. Munira Wilson, Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and could I echo the Secretary of State's remarks about the tragedy in Minehead, and my thoughts and prayers are with all those affected too. Mr Speaker, every parent putting a baby into childcare wants to know that they are safe. In light of the crucial role that CCTV played in the harrowing case at Twickenham Green Nursery in my own constituency, which resulted in a nursery worker being convicted of 21 counts of child cruelty last month, and also the tragic case of Gigi Mihan in Cheadle, will the Secretary of State commit to issuing fresh guidance to nurseries on the use of and regular monitoring of CCTV footage?
Minister.
I thank the Liberal Democrat spokesperson for her question. She will know that I've met with the family of Genevieve recently. That was a very tragic case. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to protect children in nursery settings. That's why I'm pleased in the Best Start in Life strategy published just 2 weeks ago, our commitment to having early years settings inspected within 18 months and indeed within 4 years. I've offered a meeting with the Honourable Member. I'm very happy to discuss these issues further.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Apprenticeships should be a route open to everyone, but I've met too many young people in Doncaster East and the Isle of Axholme who are more than capable of doing the job. They've got the hands-on skills, the attitude and the drive to work, but they're being held back because the apprenticeships mean they have to get a grade 4 in English or maths. When will the government move forward with reforming this rule so we stop shutting out good people from good jobs just because they didn't get a pass in the classroom?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend, and I absolutely agree with him. This government will indeed stop shutting out good people from getting good jobs, and he's probably aware the department funds apprentices to achieve a qualification as part of their training. We do not set entry requirements. These are decisions for employers. However, we have allowed for more flexibility in English and maths required for adults aged 19 and over.
Alex Blur.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Children in receipt of the Adoption and Special Guardianship Support Fund often have significant mental health, well-being and educational needs. For many of these children, their individual therapy is the single biggest factor enabling them to continue at school. So what assessments has the Minister made of the implications for cutting funding for this therapy?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Adoption and Special Guardianship Fund provides valuable therapeutic support to children and families, and that's why we've committed to continuing the 50 million to this financial year. We have been holding discussions with key stakeholders and we will soon be announcing next steps for the fund.
Very slow.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. As well as the Sixth Form College, I'm also proud to be a governor of the Abbey Hill Special School in Stoke-on-Trent and draw the House's attention to my register accordingly, which is why I was so appalled by the comments of the Reform UK chairman who said that children with special needs are naughty children and often as a result of bad parenting. So can I invite the Secretary of State to condemn those comments and reaffirm our support for those children and parents?
Briefly.
Mr Speaker, I join with my honourable friend in condemning those remarks. I'm aware that the Reform UK leader also said he's not being heartless, he's being frank in similar comments that he offered. Well, I'll be frank, Reform UK would plunge the SEND system into further disarray. Only Labour will back the children with SEND who need support.
John Cooper.
Mr Speaker, the Citizen Aid First Aid charity provides excellent education in emergency situations to children and young people. I've written to the Scottish Education Department inviting them to introduce them to the curriculum. Any interest from the Department of Education down here?
If the honourable gentleman would write to me, I'll look into it further.
Maggie Shanker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Meaningful work experiences can be an absolute life changer for our young people, cutting the risk of them being out of education and employment or training. In Derby, the Derby Promise is hard at work, linking schools with employers to raise aspirations of our young people. Does the Secretary of State agree with me and recognise the valuable work that the Derby Promise delivers, opening up doors for our young people?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for his question, and indeed I agree with him, and I applaud him for his work that he's done on the Derby Promise before he entered this place, and for all he has done for children in Derby South since. I'm delighted that employers like Rolls-Royce have signed up to the Derby Promise to bring industry closer to young people to inspire their future careers.
Sir John Whittingdale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Essex has seen a huge increase in the number of requests for EHCN assessments and is failing to meet the target, in part due to the difficulty in recruiting educational psychologists. Rather than trying to bury the problem by scrapping EHCPs, can she say what the government is doing to meet that need?
Minister.
The honourable gentleman preempts decisions that have been made. We have not made decisions regarding the future of the education, health and care plans. We are listening carefully, working with the sector, making sure we have the workforce within the system and the support systems to identify needs early. We'll continue to do that and work with families to design a system that works rather than the one that we inherited.
Rachel Maskell.
York is seeking to advance new models of support for children with SEND, which are inclusive and provide opportunity, including greater curriculum flexibility to deliver a broader education in small groups and also a life skills curriculum, so children are equipped to navigate the world around them safely. Would the Secretary of State support City of York Council deliver such measures?
Minister.
The Honourable Lady will know we have a curriculum and assessment review that's currently being undertaken by an independent panel. We are keen that it is a broad and rich curriculum, but it is also inclusive, and we will be reporting on it when the panel reports on their recommendations in the autumn.
Sir Julian Smith.
Lewis. Mr. Speaker, thank you. When the Secretary of State talks of such a large reduction in the number of anticipated future primary school pupils, does she attribute any part of that to a wish by certain communities to develop a parallel education system rather than engaging in full integration with this country?
So State.
I'm not quite clear what the right honourable gentleman's driving at with that question. What I have said in response to the very sharp decline we've seen in the birth rate is that as a government we want to make sure that people are able to make choices that are right for them, including around family size. And my concern is that for too many young people, because of the inaccessibility of housing, the challenges that they face in the jobs market, they're making decisions that they don't necessarily want to be making. And that's why the expansion of childcare, for example, is a critical part of how we're supporting families.
Hazelgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Those working in our schools in South Gloucestershire do a brilliant job, but they receive the lowest funding per pupil head in all of England via a funding formula inherited from the previous government. Could the Minister please confirm if she has plans to review this formula as part of the impactful wider work to ensure that every child receives the education they need to thrive, no matter where they live?
Minister.
We recognise that schools are working incredibly hard to deliver in their communities, and there are a whole range of factors that impact upon school funding, whether that's rurality, urban, pupil numbers, declining roles, as has already been discussed. We will continue to keep the school funding formula under review. It does take time, and it has to be done very carefully to ensure certainty for schools about their funding planning.
Manifest Ejected.
Mr. Speaker, last year there were 565 EHCPs issued in Cambridgeshire, with fewer than 10% completed within the statutory 20-week deadline. Cambridgeshire County Council now ranked 10th worst nationally for the timelines on their delivery. With 99% of SEND tribunals going in favour of the parent, what steps is she taking to improve the process that sees so many applications require a tribunal, and to improve the delivery of EHCPs in Cambridgeshire, assuming they aren't going to be scrapped in mainstream schools?
Mr. Speaker, until that final point, I thought the honourable gentleman raised some very serious concerns that we've heard this afternoon from many colleagues about the house, across the House do need us to bring forward reform to deliver better outcomes for children with SEND. And what I would say to the party opposite is if they want to work with us to do this in a way that does deliver a better system for children with SEND, I'd be very happy to do so. But at the moment, Mr. Speaker, all we seem to get is opposition for opposition's sake.
Lawrence Turner.
Thank
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Victoria College in my constituency is one of the relatively small number of SEND specialist further education colleges in the country. They do outstanding work. For many years, these colleges have not had access to dedicated capital grant funding. Will the Minister be so good as to look into this issue and agree to meet with me to discuss it further?
Minister.
Ensuring schools and colleges have the resources and buildings that they need is key to part of our mission to break down barriers to opportunity. Very happy to meet my honourable friend to discuss these issues further.
Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sadly, both universities in my constituency of Leicester South, which is De Montfort University and Leicester University, are on the verge of making hundreds of redundancies and even shutting down complete facilities and faculties. So can I ask the Minister what financial commitment or otherwise her department is making to secure academic jobs, especially in subjects like chemistry, humanities and language, rather than making short-term cuts? Thank you.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman will appreciate that universities are independent institutions that are able to make their own decisions around financial management. What we have sought to do as a government is to stabilise the higher education sector. That's why we took the difficult but necessary decision to increase tuition fees, and later on this year we'll be publishing a post-16 strategy that will deal with many of the questions that he's asking about.
I heard from a mum who applied for an EHCP for her son in December, was told it would be ready in June, but she's now been informed by Bucks Council that he remains unallocated with 789 children ahead of him. I'm very grateful to the Secretary of State for the work she's doing to grip and reform the SEND system, but can she talk a bit more about how about her ambitions to support people caught in those horrible waiting games for EHCPs?
Mr. Speaker, I think we've heard this afternoon from my friend and from so many across this House about the urgent need to make improvement happen for children with SEND. It's why we are laying the foundations with more investment in the system, both through the high needs budget but also capital, so that we have the places that are needed. But there is, of course, much that we are doing right now with councils to improve some of the unacceptable waits that parents currently face.
Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The superb John Hampden School in Wendover reports to me they're running a £109,000 deficit supporting students with significant SEND while they await assessments. But as an infant-only school, often that money doesn't come through till the pupils have moved up to a junior school. Can the Minister look at the way the system is working when it comes to just infant schools to make the system fairer?
Minister.
As we said, we are looking at reforms to the system. We recognise there are challenges right across the system that we inherited. We know that families face challenges in securing the support, schools face challenges also. We will be looking at every detail of this, and we will be announcing reforms in the White Paper in the autumn.
Final question, James Frith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently hosted a series of engagements and roundtables on the SEM reforms. It's impossible to ignore the sheer size of the problems that this government is confronting. Can the Secretary of State confirm that as Labour rebuilds this broken system, that the legal right to specialist support will remain a core principle of every child's entitlement, that we will go further, delivering real outcomes, genuine inclusion and an SEN system built to serve families, not fail them?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for the work he's done in this area over many years and for the way that he champions this cause here on behalf of his constituents. I can confirm to him that children with SEND have a legal right to additional support, and Labour will protect that. He will appreciate that discussions are underway with families, with campaigners, with school leaders to make sure we get this system right. A better system with strengthened support and much more timely intervention and early identification of need. It is clear this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, that that mission is urgent and we need to deliver better outcomes for children with SEND, and I look forward to working with them on that.
Right, that completes questions led from bench change over. Before I call the Shadow Home Secretary to ask his urgent question, I shall remind the House that honourable members must not refer to any matters which are currently before the court. Members are free to refer to the broader policy issues, but should not get into the details of the specific cases which a criminal charge have been brought. Right, let's start. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Home Secretary to make a statement on criminal activity by illegal immigrants at asylum hotels.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
As the House will be aware, on Tuesday the 8th of July, an arrest was made by Essex Police following incidents that took place in Epping earlier that day, and a man was subsequently charged. His trial is due to start on the 26th of August, and he has been remanded into custody until that time. These are very serious allegations, but it is vital that the criminal justice procedures are able to run their course. Superintendent Tim Tubbs of Essex Police has said, and I quote, "The last thing we want is for any public discussion to hinder an ongoing prosecution." So I want to thank Essex Police both for their swift response in that case and in handling with diligence and professionalism the protests in Essex that we saw yesterday evening and in previous days. Mr. Speaker, criminal activity of any kind is totally unacceptable wherever it occurs and whoever it is perpetrated by. As outlined following the recent Casey report, we are improving joint protection arrangements between the police and immigration enforcement linked to the asylum system. We are clear that where crimes are committed, every effort must be made to catch, prosecute and punish those responsible. Let there be absolutely no doubt, foreign nationals, including asylum seekers who abuse our hospitality by breaking our laws, should expect to be removed from this country. And in the first year this government has been in office, 5,179 foreign national criminals were removed from the UK, a 14% increase on the previous year. That is important progress, but we want to go further. We are changing the law in the Border Security Bill to ensure individuals convicted of any registered sexual offence are not granted asylum. We are legislating to allow for the tagging of any migrant considered to pose a threat to public safety or national security, as well as strengthening our crackdown on illegal working. But we must go further to end hotel use. This Labour government inherited an asylum system in chaos, with 400 hotels in use at their peak in 2023, at a cost of almost £9 million per day. We are changing this, clearing the asylum backlog and increasing returns to end the use of asylum hotels altogether by the end of this Parliament. Alongside these actions, we are mounting a comprehensive and wide-ranging effort to tackle small boat crossings, including the intensified cooperation and pilot return scheme with France that the Home Secretary outlined in her statement last week. There is no quick fix for the chronic problems this government inherited, but for the first time in years, there is now a serious and sensible plan to restore order and proper management to the asylum and immigration system. And let me state plainly to the House that we expect rules to be respected and enforced, and we expect the law to be followed. When it is not, we expect those involved to face the full force of the law. That is why we are taking every possible step to deliver the strong border security this country needs, because nothing matters more than the safety of the British people.
Thank you. Crystal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the Police Minister was crowing about the government's action on small boats, but the truth is this. So far this year, the government has allowed in 23,000 illegal immigrants across the Channel. That is 52% up on the last year under this government, and this year has been by far the worst ever. And numbers in asylum hotels are now higher than at the time of the election. This is a border security crisis, but it is also a public safety crisis, especially for women and girls. Many nationalities crossing, for example Afghans, commit up to 20 times more sex offences than average. Louise Casey made that point in her report. And now we have press reporting on the huge scale of the crime committed by illegal immigrants housed in the government's own asylum hotels. The Sun found 339 charges in the last 6 months based on only half the hotels currently operated. And the Mail on Sunday found 708 charges based on only a third of those hotels. Those crimes included multiple cases of rape, sexual assault, violence, theft and arson, including the case in Epping she referred to, where a 38-year-old Ethiopian man has been charged with sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl. An illegal immigrant in Oxford has been convicted of raping a 20-year-old woman in a churchyard. A Sudanese man was convicted of strangling and attempting to rape a woman in a nightclub toilet in Wakefield. Now, violent protest in response to those appalling crimes is never justified. The public, though, are rightly sick of this illegal immigrant crime wave. It has to end. So in her response, will she commit now to doing these things? 1. Record and publish the immigration status of all offenders. Secondly, close that asylum hotel in Epping. Thirdly, repeal the Human Rights Act for immigration matters. And finally, will she emulate Greece's new approach, which started today, and deport all illegal immigrants upon arrival from France without judicial process, either back to their country of origin or to a safe third country? Will she give the House and the country those commitments?
Minister.
Let me repeat to the House, Mr. Speaker. Any allegation of crime or sexual assault is incredibly serious, including by individuals in the asylum system, and it is to be treated so by the authorities and treated so by this government. And I must say to the Shadow Home Secretary, I regret the tone that he's taking on such a serious and important matter. And I would also gently remind him to look at his record on this issue and that of the party opposite. At their peak, over 400 asylum hotels were in operation, housing over 50,000 people at a cost of almost £9 million per day. Enforced returns were down 50% on 2010. Returns of foreign national offenders had fallen by 1,000. Criminal smuggler gangs were able to exploit our weak border security. There was no proper management of public safety risks posed by individual asylum seekers.
Order. We both understand. Okay, carry on.
There was no proper management of public safety risks posed by individual asylum seekers, and migrants could work illegally in the gig economy with few sanctions for the companies responsible. This government is gripping the situation, turning the system around. We've removed 5,179 foreign national offenders in our first year in office. And just to put that in perspective for the benefit of the House, that is more foreign criminals than were removed in the entire 20 months that the Right Honourable Gentleman was the Minister for Immigration. Excuse. I would say the same pattern is true of illegal working as well, but actually it's even worse. In the first quarter of this year, we delivered more raids, more arrests and fines against illegal working than he managed in the entire time that he was the Immigration Minister. We did more in 3 months to crack down on illegal working than he managed in 20 months. And now, it's not nonsense, it's facts actually. And now we are trying to go further in all these areas, but it's clear that the party opposite and their friends in Reform are the ones trying to stop us. We introduced counter-terror measures at the border to smash the gangs responsible for the vile trade. They voted against the bill that delivers that. We introduced measures to ban sex offenders from getting asylum in the UK. They voted against the bill that delivers them. We introduced tagging for those arriving illegally who pose a risk to the public and to extend illegal working duties to cover the gig economy. And once again, Mr. Speaker, they voted against it. 14 years of inaction, leaving our borders exposed and our communities fractured. And yet the Shadow Home Secretary has the cheek to lecture us about keeping the country safe.
Chris Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I draw the House's attention to my declaration of interest. People who come to this country legally and work hard are welcome, but the Minister is right to say that those who don't are not. We know one of the big pull factors is the ability to work illegally in the UK. And can the Minister set out what the government is doing to stamp out illegal working, and in particular what the role of the new Fair Work Agency will be from the Employment Rights Act, which should be critical in stopping illegal working in the UK?
Well, I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and he will know that the Immigration Minister, who I believe gave evidence to the Home Affairs Select Committee, to which the honourable member sits on that esteemed committee, is looking at this issue. I know recently she had a number of the companies that we have seen in the press have been reported as employing or using people, particularly from some of the asylum hotels, and I know the Shadow Home Secretary has taken a particular interest in this, and I know she is working very hard to make sure that those companies are held to account, and that the new provisions that we're bringing in to make sure that the gig economy is treated in the same way as other employers who have to check the immigration status of individuals is followed through. So there is much more to do, but certainly I know the Immigration Minister is working on this very hard.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Sarah Orme.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The scenes of violent unrest at the Bell Hotel this weekend are deeply concerning. Liberal Democrats will always defend the right to peaceful protest, but what we saw went far beyond that. There is no place for that sort of violence and thuggery in our society. And I want to thank the police and the emergency services for their brave and professional response. And my thoughts go out to anyone who's feeling frightened as a result of these unacceptable scenes. Of course, it's completely understandable that people are concerned about criminal activity, and not least after the former Conservative government's chaotic approach to immigration shattered public trust. And that's why we need an efficient asylum system that swiftly returns those without a genuine right to stay. So I would welcome details from the Minister on what steps the government is taking to deliver this. Clear rules that are properly enforced will be key for rebuilding public trust in the system after it was broken by the Conservatives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, can I welcome the tone of the contribution by the person who speaks for the honourable member who speaks for the Liberal Democrats. This is a serious issue, and I fully agree with the honourable lady about peaceful protest, but when that steps over into violent disorder, as we saw last summer, for example, that is totally unacceptable. I would say to the honourable lady that she will know that there is a huge amount of effort going in to deal with the backlog that we inherited from the previous government to speed up the process. So those people who shouldn't be in our country are swiftly removed, and those people who are refugees, who are asylum seekers and their claim is accepted, can then get on with the rest of their lives.
Ollie James.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the surge we've had in returns and as well the raids on the illegal working practices. And as we've spoke about before many times in this House, it is these companies that are incentivising the boat crossings and ultimately undermining our national security. Can the Home Office Minister set out what further enforcement can be done? And is it possible that perhaps conversations can be had with the Treasury about what further measures could be taken to bring some of these companies to heel?
Well, the honourable lady will know that I'm the Police Minister, and I know that the Immigration Minister has been having a number of conversations, particularly, as I just said, with employers where we know that there is work going on that should not be taking place because of the immigration status of individuals. But I know that work is already underway. There is investment with the National Crime Agency. I think there's an additional number of officers who are working on this. And we know as well that in terms of smashing the gangs who are behind bringing people across in those small boats, work is underway with that, as well as our international arrangements and treaties that we're signing with countries, which, of course, the previous government wasn't able to do.
Proud the House, Edward Lee.
This is a real national crisis, and there is such outcry and outrage in the country. There's a real danger people will take the law in their own hands, which we all deprecate. But we have to solve this, and the only way to solve it is to have a reasonable and proper deterrent. Arrest the people who land on our shores, detain them, and send them back to where they come from. The Human Rights Act was never intended to cover illegal immigrants of this sort. We have to do it for all our sakes, otherwise people will wrongly take the law in their own hands.
Well, as I just said in my comments to the Honourable Lady who speaks for the Liberal Democrats. Peaceful protest is completely acceptable, and we understand that there are different opinions on immigration in this country, and people should be allowed to voice those opinions. I think when it turns into violent disorder, as we've seen, that is not acceptable. I know that the police behave in a very professional way. They allow protests to take place, but clearly they have to keep the King's peace as well. So just to set that to one side. The Right Honourable Gentleman, though, the Father of the House, is correct in that we do need a functioning system that works, where applications are made, they are dealt with swiftly, people are not waiting for years for applications to be decided, and those who should not be in this country should be then removed.
Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think many of us agree with the Minister when she says it's important that we are able to debate immigration and refugees and how we as a country support them, and that we do recognise when there are allegations of incredibly serious sexual offences involved, people are rightly concerned. Peaceful protest has its part, but she will be very conscious that the police themselves have condemned the mindless thuggery that we have seen in Epping. And there are reports that seem quite serious about neo-Nazi groups and their leaflets being circulated. So can she tell us, in order to protect peaceful protest, which many of us seek to do, we have to stop direct targeting of individuals with violence. Can she tell us what assessment has been made as to whether there has been any coordination of violence by groups in these incidents?
Well, again, I will say peaceful protest, we absolutely believe is part of our democratic process. Unfortunately, as the Honourable Lady will know, there are always people who will seek to exploit situations, and I think we probably saw some of that over the last few days in Epping. However, I would say that, again, there were people from the local community there who were expressing genuinely held views, and I think it's important we note that. But I'm also aware that there was literature being distributed and other groups who were perhaps coming to Epping to stir up problems as well. And I would say to my honourable friend that the police are aware of that. They are looking at all the information and evidence about what happened, and they will obviously keep that under review.
Dr. Neil Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks ago in Epping, there were 3 alleged sexual assaults on school-age girls, and my thoughts are with the victims, their families, and their peers. Yeah. These were allegedly linked to the Bell Hotel, which has been stood up as an asylum hotel against all advice. Since then, we have had numerous major protests involving hundreds of people, and with injuries to police officers and damage to police vehicles. People quite rightly have the right to peaceful protest, but these violent scenes are not us. They are not Epping, and they are not what we stand for. I want to thank Essex Police for all that they are doing to keep us safe in these challenging and distressing times for our town. Now we have the protests, we have churches cancelling services, businesses closing early, and local residents feeling like they are barricaded in their own homes. The hotel is in the wrong place, it is near a school, and there is inadequate safeguarding of the hotel's vulnerable residents. This is a crisis that is boiling over, and for the sake of community safety, the Home Secretary and the government must get a grip of this situation. They must listen and act now to close this hotel immediately. Will they now do this?
Well, can I just say to the honourable gentleman that I thought his comments were very measured on behalf of his constituents, and I think he's absolutely right that our first thoughts should be with those affected by what happened in Epping, with the victims and their families. So I think that's important for the House to note that. I also wanted just to reiterate that this government is committed to closing all hotels by the end of this Parliament.
Luke Eccleston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the Shadow Home Secretary's concern about crimes linked to the asylum system. That's a concern that would be held across the House. So why does the Minister think that the Conservatives and Reform voted against the bill, which allows the tagging of asylum seekers who pose a threat to public safety?
I have absolutely no idea, and I think it's for the Shadow Home Secretary to explain that one. But clearly, I would expect all honourable members and right honourable members in the House to want to do everything to keep our communities safe.
Cameron Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I look forward to the swift deportation of anybody who comes and takes advantage of our hospitality to break our laws and attack women and young girls. In July 2024, I warned my constituents not to throw away their futures as the far-right lynch mobs threatened to spread to Gloucestershire. Once again, this thuggery has now flared up in Epping. What actions is this government taking to support authorities in the prosecution of those who whip up this furore, both online and in positions of influence?
Well, the honourable gentleman may know there's been a great deal of work undertaken since the disorder of last summer to make sure that there is intelligence gathered from the online space as well as the offline space, and that we are, as all the authorities, are prepared and ready if there is any sign of disorder again. But just to reiterate, peaceful protest is something that I think all of us in this House would recognise is an important part of a democratic society, but not when it crosses over into the disorder and the mayhem that we saw last year when it was criminal acts that were being perpetrated by individuals.
Amanda Martin.
And I agree it's important that we are able to debate immigration and asylum. People across the country know the consequences when the asylum system fails and when it fails to protect the public, communities and businesses. We've had experience of that in my own city. Does the Minister agree with me that the public safety must come first? It is indefensible that both the Tory party and Reform oppose measures allowing the tagging of high-risk individuals? And does she agree that the breadth and depth of this crisis needs us all to work together to regain public confidence?
I absolutely agree with the words of my honourable friend. I think she put that very eloquently, and I would expect again that all members of this House would want to do everything to protect the members of all communities in this country.
Sir Julian Lewis.
When the Minister says that an asylum seeker convicted of an offence will not be granted asylum, does she have some special method of sending them back to a country from which we cannot send anyone back if they've broken into our country illegally? Otherwise, what does her sanction amount to?
To the specific question that the right honourable gentleman raises, this is about not granting asylum to those who are convicted of a registered sexual offence. So it's not recognising that they have an asylum claim. That's the issue that we're legislating for in the moment. I fully understand that the right honourable gentleman, and I understand as well that there are certain countries in the world where it is difficult to return individuals to. I fully appreciate that. But what we are setting out in the legislation is a clear note that asylum will not be granted to those who are convicted of registered sexual offences.
John Slinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Shadow Home Secretary is trying to out-populist the populists, and there are dangers involved in that. Does the Minister agree with me that it's common sense for individuals convicted of sexual crimes to be barred from receiving protection in the UK? If so, why does she think that the Conservatives and Reform voted against?
It was a shame question.
Well, again, that is a matter for each individual member opposite to explain to their constituents. And I know that this is an issue that people care about, and they will have to explain their decision to their own constituents, including in Croydon.
Kirsty Blackman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We've got a responsibility to deal in the truth. We've got a responsibility to counter the narratives when the narratives are plainly false. The Minister talked about the fact that this has crossed over into mindless thuggery. Every one of us should be standing up here saying to our constituents or anyone that gets in touch who are spreading rumours that have got no basis in the truth. For example, in constituencies like mine, there was a rumour going around last year about asylum seekers in hotels that had absolutely no basis in the truth, but could have done what has happened in Epping and caused there to be some sort of mob. This is dog whistle politics, Mr. Speaker. What is the Minister doing to say to people, actually, just like not everybody in any community in our country are rapists, not everybody in migrant hotels are rapists, and we should be doing what we can to ensure that people are protected and decisions are made as quickly as possible.
Well, I think the Honourable Lady raises a really important point, and I think over the last few years, the online space in particular has been used for misinformation, for downright lies, shall we say, as well. And it's really important that we all recognise that we should look very carefully when we are looking at social media sites. We should use our critical thinking as we teach our children in schools. Always ask the question about why is this piece of information being put out? Do I think it's from a reliable source? Look for reliable media sources if you're seeking information about what's actually happening. So it is really important. And I think for this House, we perhaps haven't always been as quick as we should be at recognising how social media has moved things on in society in a way that we need to now deal with. And I know there's an enormous amount of work in DCIT and within the Home Office to look at what more we can do around social media and the online space.
Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Shadow Home Secretary has spoken passionately about crimes that have taken place in this country, including, I dare say, a number of individuals who entered the country on the watch of his government while he was a Home Office Minister. Yet, does she agree with me, as other members have said, that parties opposite taking that position whilst voting against tagging asylum seekers who are perceived to be a threat or barring from the country those who have been convicted of sexual crimes not only damages confidence in our communities, but damages the chances, the life chances of asylum seekers who have committed no crimes and who have a legitimate claim to be here?
Yes, and I think my honourable friend puts that very well. Within this, there are people who are fleeing persecution from parts of the world. And this country, as we all know, and I've heard many times in this House, we recognise our role in the world to deal with people who are fleeing persecution and to offer them a safe haven. So I fully endorse what my honourable friend just said.
Sir Gavin Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the last year, how many gangs have actually been smashed?
As I understand it, and obviously I'm the policing minister, but I will get the immigration minister to write to you about this as well. But the NCA, I know, have over 80 ongoing investigations into networks. We've got 100 new NCA, the National Crime Agency officers that have been recruited and funded by the Border Security Command. The total number of officers now focusing solely on this issue is over 500.
Gareth Stowell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When violent disorder erupted on the streets of my constituency last summer, the police put themselves between two groups of people who had been wound up and were looking to see how much damage they could do to each other. Chief Constable Chris Noble, along with Chief Inspector Chief Inspector David Barrow and Laura Davies, made sure that after the event, communities came together to realise that neighbours can live in peace. My constituents expect everybody to be prosecuted when they commit a sexual offence and a crime of some sort. Could I ask the Minister, though, once those events have taken place, what work is she doing across government to make sure those communities can come together again so that they can live together in peace? Because nobody wants to walk around on eggshells fearful of their neighbours.
Yes, and my honourable friend raises a really important point, and after the disorder last summer, we did see communities spontaneously coming together actually and wanting to say that what had happened in their local area, that was not the majority, that was a very small number of people. And I know MHCLG have been working with local authorities to make sure that rebuilding that community cohesion that for so many years under the last administration was not seen as important at all, because we know community cohesion and all parts of our society feeling safe and feeling valued is so important and stops then those who wish to divide communities and to put people against each other. That's the way to deal with that is through community cohesion and recognising the valuable role that all parts of society and our communities play.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Illegal migrants crossing the Channel are 24 times more likely to end up in British jails than British-born citizens. Yet this government allow thousands of unvetted males to enter this country who are going to commit horrific crimes like rape and murder, and there's some potential terrorists amongst them. So, does she agree with me? It's time to forget the silly legislation that the Labour MPs opposite are bleating on about, and it's time to detain these people and deport them, and we don't want to see any of these silly tags put on their ankles. Just detain and deport straight away.
Well, the honourable gentleman who I sat on the Home Affairs Select Committee with for a number of years will know that when, and I think actually he attended the visit to Manston when we were both on the Home Affairs Select Committee. Oh, well, perhaps he didn't. Well, it might have helped if he did, because at Manston, one of the things that happens is information biometrics are taken from people who come across in small boats. They are checked against records. So I just wish to I just wish the honourable gentleman might have a look at what actually happens. And I would say to him, I think the statistic that he's raising is one that comes from a newspaper. I don't think it's actually been verified, but I'm willing to have a look at it. But I think it is in the Sun newspaper, if I recall.
Mr Osborne.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Members will be aware of the public streaming of violence and criminal activity towards property and police officers. This is the second year where this has happened over the summer period. Can the Minister confirm that she's engaging with other departments to try and look at how we can review streaming activity so that it doesn't promote violence and criminal activity and replication of this in other locations around our country?
Yes, that's a very important point, and there is ongoing conversations with DC, with the Home Office, with other government departments to make sure that that particular point that the honourable gentleman is raising is addressed. And I know that particularly in the terrorist field that has been a problem, and action has been taken very speedily to get those postings down.
Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I've been fobbed off with ridiculous non-answers to my written questions on this subject and an insulting letter from the Immigration Minister. So I don't want to be promised yet another evasive letter that ignores the question. Can the Minister tell us the legal reasons the Immigration Minister cited to me to justify the government and Serco refusing to tell MPs and local people when they move migrants into our constituencies and where?
Well, the honourable gentleman is a relatively new member of this House. I've been in the House a while, and certainly there hasn't been under the previous administration that did not happen. Now, I know that there is always opportunities to improve. I think that local members of parliament, local councils, the police are all engaged when there are people being moved into certain areas of the country. I know that happens. It could be better, I'm sure. But I'm happy to raise again with the Immigration Minister, because I haven't obviously had sight of the letter that she sent to the honourable gentleman.
Marcus Campbell-Savers.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The press regularly runs stories where economic migrants are quoted describing what they believe are the benefits available to them in the UK and the work opportunities our relatively under-regulated labour markets offer. Would the Minister agree it's time we considered Labour's ID cards plan, scrapped by the Conservative Liberal Democrat coalition, and its ability to reduce the UK's pull factors for new migrants?
Well, what I would say to my honourable friend is that the government have been taking action over the past 12 months to deal with this issue of illegal working. 10,031 illegal working visits, leading up to 7,130 arrests, and that marks a 48% and 51% rise respectively compared to the year before. This marks the first time in a 12-month period where more than 10,000 visits have taken place to start to tackle the illegal working in this country.
Jim Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My constituency has a proud history of being a welcoming community. We have an Asylum hotel in the constituency that's been there for 2 years with no problems, and the families are well integrated in the local community with many children in local schools. And yet, late last week, we were told that people would be asked to move from that hotel with no notice from today onwards. They don't know where they'll need to move, and that's despite the fact the hotel will still be used for asylum seekers. I've raised issues with the Home Office and had no responses. So could the Minister urgently look into this issue today, and will she agree that every MP with an asylum hotel in their constituency should have a dedicated Home Office contact so we can work together to promote peace and harmonious community relations and against disinformation and violence?
I'm very happy to pass on that particular issue to the Immigration Minister.
Kevin Bonavent.
Speaker, we've just heard MPs from Conservative and Reform parties decry legislation that they say is stop and fix a problem, and yet they talk the talk, but when it comes to actually voting for legislation, they don't vote for it. We've had the Shadow Home Secretary with an angry face at the beginning, going on about what's happening in hotels. It was his policy, his government's policy, that set up hotels being used as hostel for asylum seekers. This government has said we will end that policy. Can my honourable friend set out, not gimmicks, but the sensible approach that this government is taking to end the use of hotels as hostels?
I thank my honourable friend for those comments, and perhaps it might help the Shadow Home Secretary if I just say to him the number of hotels has gone down under this Labour government. Despite what the Shadow Home Secretary says, the number of hotels have gone down since this government came into power.
What's Caroline Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Sorry, that'll be the last time I get called. Mr. Speaker. It is summer, hopefully soon. Violent disorder is always wrong, Mr. Speaker. But what we need to recognise is that the violent disorder is a symptom of the outrage that people feel at the current situation and the fear that they feel of crime, particularly sexual crimes, in their community. So the Minister, instead of focusing on tone of questions in the House today and what has happened in the past, should be focusing her answers on what she's going to do to resolve the problem. And in that respect, I agree with the Father of the House and what he said about requiring a credible deterrent. So in that respect, does she regret cancelling the Rwanda scheme?
Yeah, good.
I totally disagree with what the Honourable Lady just said. Violent disorder is not a symptom. Violent disorder is criminal. It's thuggery. It's attacks on our police officers, our brave police officers. So there is no reason, excuse for what happened last summer or for any violent disorder that may happen in the future. It's criminal. It should be prosecuted and people should face the full consequences of the law.
Dr. Scott Arp.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would like to thank the police for the way they've dealt with the violent disorder we've seen from a minority of people in recent days. I would much rather they were investigating the crimes which are allegedly behind these incidents. And I do want to thank the Minister for showing zero tolerance to the minority of people within our asylum system who do break the law. It's right that we do that. But she mentions that the number of hotels have come down, the number of assignment hotels to come down. Has the bill also come down?
The number of hotels has come down. The aim is to reduce the bill overall. I think it's by £1 billion. That's the aim. But the number of hotels has come down since we came into power.
Wendy Morton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 1 year on, it's quite clear that the Labour government has not got a grip on illegal migration and criminality. There's no plan. There's no cap, and it would appear today that there's not even an answer or a knowledge as to whether any gangs have been smashed. So when will she put in place an effective deterrent that protects not just our borders, but our citizens?
So the Honourable Lady says there's no plan. First, we're working with source and transit companies to stop dangerous journeys before they begin. Second, we're stepping up law enforcement with new powers, more National Crime Agency officers and specialist units in France to disrupt smuggling gangs. Third, we're strengthening border security with more patrols, drones and legal challenges to stop overcrowded boats. Fourth, we've secured a new returns agreement with France, something that the Honourable the Shadow Home Secretary couldn't achieve. A new returns agreement with France so people arriving illegally by small boat can be sent back, while also accepting a matching number of eligible applicants through a safe route. Finally, we're cracking down on illegal working and reforming the asylum system to close loopholes exploited by gangs and ensure fair, controlled migration. That looks like a plan to me. That's a plan.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the weekend, there's been numerous reports about an alleged incident at the Metropole Hotel, the Asylum Hotel in my constituency of Blackpool South. The Minister will know I've raised concerns about this hotel numerous times with the Home Office. So can she ensure that this is investigated swiftly and that I, as the MP, and the community get a report urgently.
Minister?
Absolutely. I'm very happy to give that assurance, and I know that the honourable member has been raising issues for some time, so I'm happy to do that.
Sarah Poach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whilst migrant hotels cost the British taxpayer billions, migrants are now being moved into HMOs, taking houses from local people and causing misery for neighbours. Can the Honourable Lady tell the House how many migrants have been moved into HMOs and what is the cost to the British taxpayer?
I think what I can tell the Honourable Lady is that we inherited a huge backlog of claims for asylum. One of the important parts of dealing with the backlog is processing those claims and determining whether people have an asylum claim that can be successful, and if it's not, they should be then returned. So that's the whole purpose of closing the hotels, because we're going to speed up the processing of the applications.
Lewis Cocking.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last month, the Immigration Minister could not tell me in a written answer how many illegal asylum seekers have a criminal record. We have an asylum hotel in my constituency of Broxbourne in Chesham, and my constituents are understandably concerned about criminal activity and antisocial behaviour. They don't think the government is listening to them. So when can the Minister come to this House and meet her manifesto commitment and close the asylum hotel in my constituency?
As I've said a number of times, this government is committed to closing all hotels by the end of this Parliament. There are fewer hotels opened now than when we came into power last July.
Bradley Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The vast majority of British citizens are law-abiding and are concerned about the impact of mass migration on their communities. A deterrent would go some way towards restoring trust that the British people may have in the asylum system. So when will the government implement a deterrent to send those entering the country illegally to a safe third country?
Well, as I've just set out in great detail, we have a plan. And if I just say respectfully to the honourable gentleman that the plan that the previous government had resulted in, I think it was 4 volunteers going to Rwanda. A general election was called. The Prime Minister decided to call a general election. Why didn't he let the scheme operate if it was such a success? Because that's a real question. Why go to the country if you were just about to have an enormous success with Rwanda?
Alistair.
Mr. Speaker, the House will be aware of the serious street disturbances in my constituency last month following the alleged rape of a young 14-year-old girl. Now last week in Ballymena Magistrates Court, the court was informed that the chief suspect has fled back to Romania. Does the Minister agree that extradition that works is an imperative, and that extradition that works expeditiously is an even greater imperative?
Well, clearly that's a live matter before the courts, but I would say that I want people to be held account for their actions, and if that involves extradition, then that is the right thing to do.
Jim Shannon.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Minister, as always, for her answers. However, we seem to be hearing all too often regarding criminal activity of immigrants and asylum seekers across the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and more certainly needs to be done to address this. On behalf of my constituents who ask me this question all the time, every weekend to be precise, can I ask what steps the Minister will take to ensure we have a zero-tolerance policy to migrants awaiting an asylum decision, and that if they are detained for any kind of criminal activity in this time, they will be sent back to their country of origin as a matter of urgency? Thank you.
Well, as I said at the outset, whoever perpetrates a crime will be held to account, and there will be consequences. So I hope that is clear, that I am including people who are making asylum applications as well as the wider general public. But people have to be held to account.
That completes the UQ. We'll let the front benches change over.
Order. Before I call the Secretary of State to make his statement, I'd like to place on the record the fact that the Speaker and the Deputy Speakers. We're disappointed to see extensive coverage of Ministers' responses of the Independent Water Commission in the media this morning, before the House had had the opportunity to consider the matter. Nice to think that normal courtesies will be resumed. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I have, of course, saved the bulk of my responses for you and for the House this afternoon. And with permission, Mr. Speaker, I would like to update the House on the government's plans to reform the water sector. The water industry, quite clearly, is failing. Our rivers, lakes and seas are polluted with record levels of sewage. Water pipes have been left to crumble into disrepair, and I share customers' fury at rising bills. There are hose pipe bans right now in place across the country because not a single new reservoir has been built in over 30 years, and the lack of water infrastructure is blocking economic growth. Water companies have been allowed to profit at the expense of the British people when they should have been investing to fix our broken water pipes. They got away with this because of a broken regulatory system that has failed customers and failed the environment. The public expressed their fury during last year's general election and they voted for change. That change will now come. In just 1 year, we've put in place the building blocks for change. First, we restored accountability by giving the regulators more teeth with a ban on unfair bonuses, severe and automatic penalties for breaking the law, and jail sentences for the most serious offences. Second, we're investing £104 billion of private sector funding to rebuild the water network, upgrading crumbling pipes, repairing leaks, building new sewage treatment works, and digging out new reservoirs. This is the single biggest investment in the water sector's history, and it allows me to make a new commitment to the country that this government will cut water companies' sewage pollution in half by the end of this decade. This is the most ambitious commitment ever made by any government about water pollution, and it's just the start. Because over a decade of national renewal, we will restore our rivers, lakes and seas to good health. The third building block for change is today's final report from Sir John Cunliffe's Independent Water Commission. And I'd like to express my thanks to Sir John, his officials and all those who have contributed to this outstanding piece of work. I agree with Sir John that water regulation has been too weak, too complex and ineffective. Having 4 separate regulators with overlapping and conflicting remits has failed customers and the environment. Ofwat has failed to protect customers from water companies' mismanagement of their hard-earned money and failed to protect our waterways from record levels of pollution. Today, I can announce that this Labour government will abolish Ofwat. We will bring water functions from 4 different regulators into one, a single, powerful super regulator responsible for the entire water sector and with the teeth it needs to enforce the high standards the public rightly demand. The new regulator will stand firmly on the side of customers, investors and the environment, and it will prevent the abuses of the past. For customers, it will oversee investment and upgrade work so hard-working British families are never again hit by the shocking bill hikes we saw last year as customers were left to pay the price of failure by the previous government. For investors, it will provide the clarity and direction required for a strong partnership between government, the sector and investors to attract billions of pounds of new funding. For the environment, it will reduce all forms of pollution to clean up our rivers, lakes and seas for good. We will work closely with the Welsh Government to devolve economic regulation of water to Wales. I will publish a white paper this autumn giving the Government's full response to the Independent Water Commission's final report and launch a consultation on it. Following that, I will bring forward a new water reform bill early during the lifetime of this Parliament. Ofwat will remain in place during the transition to the new regulator, and I will ensure they provide the right leadership to oversee the current price review and investment plan during that time. To provide clarity during this period, I will issue an interim strategic policy statement to Ofwat and give ministerial directions to the Environment Agency, setting out our expectations and requirements. We will publish a transition plan as part of our full government response in the autumn. Today, we are immediately taking forward a number of Sir John's recommendations. First, we will establish a new statutory water ombudsman, a single free service to help customers resolve complaints such as incorrect bills, leaking pipes or water supply failures. The new ombudsman will have the legal powers to protect customers and will bring the water dispute resolution process in line with other utilities like energy. It's part of the government's ambition to put customers at the heart of water regulation. Second, we will end the era of water companies marking their own homework. We will end operator self-monitoring and transition to open monitoring to increase transparency and help restore public trust. Water companies are already required to publish data on some sewage spills within 1 hour. We will roll out real-time monitoring across the wastewater system. All this data will be made publicly available online. This will ensure the regulator and, importantly, also the public have the power to hold water companies fully accountable. Third, we commit to including a regional element within the new regulator to ensure greater local involvement in water planning. By moving to a catchment-based model for water system planning, we can tackle all sources of pollution entering waterways so they can be cleaned up more effectively and more quickly. This will ensure for the first time that water infrastructure investment plans align with spatial planning to support faster regional economic growth. The lack of water infrastructure that held back development around Cambridge and Oxford for so long will not happen again. The new regulatory framework will recognise the risks investors take, and if they meet their obligations, they will see a fair, stable return on their investment. Just last week, I signed the government's new water skills pledge to make sure the sector has the skills and workforce it needs to deliver this vast investment. This Labour government was elected to clean up water pollution and ensure unacceptable bill hikes can never happen again. We now have all the building blocks in place to make that happen. We are establishing a new partnership based on effective regulation where water companies, investors, communities and the government will work together to clean up our rivers, lakes and seas for good.
Shadow Minister, Robin Moore.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I'm grateful to the Secretary of State for advance sight of his statement. And I will be responding on behalf of the Shadow Secretary of State while she meets with farmers today at the Royal Welsh Show. Let me begin by recognising the scale and seriousness of the work undertaken by Sir John Cunliffe and his team. This review contains 460 pages, 88 recommendations, and represents one of the most detailed examinations of the water sector since privatisation. Indeed, there is much in it that we cautiously welcome on this side of the House, including the merger of the regulators. And as we examine the recommendations in more detail, we stand ready to support serious reform if it is done properly. But, Mr Deputy Speaker, I'm afraid to say that what we have seen and heard from the Secretary of State over the past year has not matched the seriousness of Sir John Cunliffe's work, nor has it gone anywhere near the root and branch radical reform that he sold to voters prior to the election. So I seek clarity from the Secretary of State on the following points. First, over the weekend, he announced that Labour would cut sewage bills by 50% by 2030. But what he didn't mention is that plans submitted under the previous Conservative government were already set to cut sewage bills by even more than that amount. The Times yesterday reported that the Secretary of State's new pledge would actually see an increase of an additional 20,000 discharges of sewage in our rivers compared to existing previously agreed plans. So can the Secretary of State explain why, after 88 recommendations and a year-long review into the sector, he has watered down sewage reduction targets rather than massively ramping them up? Secondly, the Secretary of State took to the airwaves at the weekend telling the public that we need to go back to the purity of our waters we all remember. But the uncomfortable truth Labour still refuses to take responsibility for is that when they left office in 2010, just 7% of storm overflows were monitored. Let me repeat that. Under Blair and Brown, 93% of sewage discharges were happening with no oversight and no accountability whatsoever. The only reason that we can talk tough today is because the previous government pushed monitoring to 100% by 2023. So I ask the Secretary of State to clarify his statement. Third, the Secretary of State told the public that he had secured £104 billion of investment from the water sector to fund these reductions. But what he didn't mention is that 93 billion of that investment plan was already submitted by water companies in October of 2023, 9 months before he was even in office. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would know this because I was the minister of the time, and I literally have the letter here showing that he had nothing to do with it. So will he comment on this issue? And fourth, the Secretary of State champions the 81 criminal investigations into water companies that have taken place since the election and his ban on water company bosses' bonuses. But what he doesn't explain is that these criminal investigations are the direct result of the Conservatives' policy of quadrupling the number of water company inspections. And it was our side of the House who launched the ban on water company bosses' bonuses. This is all available for the public to see, for the public to fact-check for themselves, as this is a matter of public record. What this all shows, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that for all its bluster and promises of radical change, the government have made almost no progress on this issue over the last year. They have sat on their hands for more than a year waiting for this review. And there's no wonder, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the campaigners that the Secretary of State so shamelessly used for votes in the run-up to the last general election are now, today, calling for his resignation. Mr. Speaker, we on this side of the House stand ready to work with the government on serious reform. We will support any action that genuinely holds water companies to account, delivers cleaner waters and protects the public from paying the price of corporate failure. But we will not stand by while the Secretary of State rewrites history, waters down ambition and backtracks on the promises that he made to the public.
Secretary of State. Well, I thank him, I think, for his comments, but it is disappointing that the Shadow Secretary of State didn't think a matter of this urgency was important enough to show up here in the chamber this afternoon. And I'm afraid that really does reflect the importance that their party gave to this issue for the 14 years that they were in power. I mean, I do enjoy listening to the honourable gentleman, but I'm afraid this afternoon he sounded a little delusional. If he really thinks they did so well on sewage, I wonder why he thinks sewage pollution in our waterways increased every single year for the 14 years that they were in charge of this government. The fact is, the Conservatives made the situation far worse because they instructed the regulator to apply a light touch when they should have told them to get a grip. They stripped out resources from the regulator, reducing its resources by 50% at one point, so it was less able to enforce against sewage pollution. And they allowed millions, if not billions of pounds to be diverted away from investment to be used instead for unjustified bonuses and dividends for water companies. It is this government that has secured £104 billion of investment to upgrade our water system. It is this government that has banned those unfair bonuses that water bosses were taking. It is this government that is introducing monitoring of all sewage outlets, and it is this government that is going to clean up our rivers, lakes and seas, where the previous government failed abysmally.
Bill Efterson.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Deputy Speaker. Well, my constituents will be very, very pleased with what the government has announced today after the 14 years of seeing increases in dumping of sewage on the beaches and in the rivers in my constituency. I couldn't help but notice that yesterday the Leader of Reform, in his answer to every question either said, "I don't know," or "I have no idea." And of course, he's not here either. But, Mr Deputy Speaker, he did say his answer to this problem was to increase payments to the shareholders and to do absolutely nothing to deal with the problems in our water industry. So will my right honourable friend confirm that he will make it his priority all the time he is the Secretary of State to ensure we reduce the sewage being dumped in our rivers, on our beaches and in our lakes?
Secretary of State.
I thank him for his question. I was, of course, on the television show in question with the honourable gentleman for Clacton. I think he told us he had no idea 6 times. Well, that much we knew. It is this government that has a plan to clean up our waterways. We put the building blocks for change in place, and it allows me to stand before this House to commit that by 2030 we will reduce sewage pollution from water companies by 50% as we move towards a decade of national renewal to clean up our waterways for good.
Liberal Democrat frontbench, Tim Farron.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I thank the Secretary of State for sight of the statement, and indeed Sir John Cunliffe for his report and his work in producing it. Liberal Democrats have long argued for the abolition of Ofwat and the creation of a new consolidated and powerful regulator. In fact, we put it to the Bill Committee and it was not supported by either the Labour Party or the Conservative Party, but the proposal today seems to include doing just that, so we strongly welcome this statement. It's a reminder to the wonderful volunteers and water campaigners across the country that their work is absolutely worthwhile and has made a huge difference. My message to them is thank you so much and keep going, because we still don't know the details and the nature of the new regulator, and of course we still see no sign in this report of any plan to tackle the toxic nature of the ownership or the structure of the water industry. So why is there no plan to change the structure of the industry itself? Even the best regulator in the world will fail if water companies are still owned by those who care nothing for the quality of the lakes, rivers and seas and care only about making as much profit as possible in return for very little investment. Is it really acceptable then to ask bill payers for a 30% rise when there is no guarantee that the water companies won't be siphoning off huge chunks of that money in dividends, pay rises or bonuses? Why is there nothing in the statement that will truly empower the volunteer citizen scientists and water campaigners I just mentioned? Why aren't we giving places on water company boards the likes of Eden Rivers Trust, the South Lakes Rivers Trust, Save Windermere, the Clean River Campaign, Surfers Against Sewage and WASP? And why is there no mention of monitoring the volume of sewage spills as well as the numbers of incidences, and no mention of including legally binding pollution reduction targets? So while this statement is welcome, and we rightly celebrate the Liberal Democrat campaign wins that it is full of, our job as a constructive, effective opposition is to scrutinise the detail and to carry on campaigning to clean up our waterways and to clean up our water industry too. That is exactly what we shall do.
Secretary of State.
I thank the right honourable gentleman for his questions, and can I echo and endorse his comments about the volunteers and citizen scientists who have carried out absolutely fantastic work to ensure that this issue remained where it needed to be, right at the top of the political agenda. And I hope they will join with me and with him in welcoming this report from Sir John. There will be a white paper and there will be a consultation alongside that. We'll launch the white paper in the autumn, giving detailed government responses to the 450-page report, 88 recommendations. There's a lot to go through, but there are proposals in there about ownership, and that will be consulted on as well. Volunteers, indeed citizen scientists, will be able to engage for the first time through the proposed regional structures. We accept that proposal in principle. The detail of it will be worked through during the consultation, but this is the first time we'll have had a level of engagement at around the catchment, around entire river systems, and citizens, local authorities, businesses will all have a voice in that, as will the farming community operating within those catchments. I believe that by reducing the number of spills, we will also reduce the volume of spills. He will be able to monitor that. He'll be able to hold me account, as will the House, as will the public, as we work towards the target that I've outlined today for reducing sewage spills from water companies by 50% by 2030. And he, of course, is lucky enough to represent one of the most beautiful parts of the country. He has Windermere up there. We're working with United Utilities to remove all sources of pollution from that beautiful, iconic lake. So what became a story of decline can become a visible symbol of renewal with this government.
Order. Order. I've now called the front benches. It's apparent that there are a very considerable number of members that wish to participate in this session. There are 2 further statements to follow before we come to the main business of the day, which is also very important. So could I urge all colleagues on both sides of the House to ask brief questions and not make statements. Andrew Peggs.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Residents in Peterborough and across Anglian Water's catchment area will welcome the statement today and the bold action taken. They know too well that the water system is broken. One of the issues we looked at as the EFRA Select Committee has also been about the need for water infrastructure. Can my right honourable friend confirm that the drive and determination he's taking today to fix the water system will also drive forward the Fens Reservoir and the infrastructure we need in the east of England? After a decade and a generation of delay on reservoirs, we now have the opportunity to succeed. Can you tell us that this will stay on track and we will get the jobs and the water resources we need in the east?
Secretary of State.
My honourable friend makes a very, very important point. We're currently going through a dry spell and we're seeing hosepipe bans in many parts of the country, and yet in the winter it rained very, very heavily. The reason we're having the hosepipe bans is because we do not have the reservoirs to catch the rain when it's falling so that we can use it in the drier periods, and that's because we didn't build a new reservoir for 30 years. That changes now. These plans include the intention to build 9 new reservoirs, and to speed up the planning process, I'm taking control as the Secretary of State of consents for reservoirs so that they can be approved much faster and go ahead to provide the country with the clean drinking water that we need.
Mark Pritchard.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Environment Agency estimates that there are 4 million regular and occasional anglers throughout the United Kingdom. 1.2 million got angling fishing licences last year. Angling across the country is worth about £3 billion to the economy, and the most the favourite pastime in this country, as he will know. Can I ask the Secretary of State, he will give an undertaking now to all the anglers throughout this country that they will be fully engaged by the new regulator?
Yeah, and the honourable gentleman makes a very important point. Anglers are quite rightly furious about levels of pollution, destroying fish and other life in the rivers, but also by the impact of abstractions, particularly from chalk streams. So the new regulator will absolutely be engaging with them. There are new mechanisms under the proposal Sir John has made today for volunteers, for campaigners to engage with the system that were not available previously. We'll consult on those in the autumn and then move ahead with legislation following that.
Helena Dolemore.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I really welcome this Water Commission, and on the Environment Select Committee we've been having each of the water bosses in one by one, and each of them has struggled to explain why their industry has prioritised bonuses over fixing broken pipes. So I really welcomed the action that this government took to ban bonuses, starting with the bonus of the Southern Water boss, Lawrence Gosden. But we were then disgusted to hear last week that he plans to take a doubling in his salary, an additional £690,000, after overseeing a time when we've seen major water outages, flooding in Hastings town centre and massive sewage dumping. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that this is a slap in the face to my constituents in Hastings and Rye, and he should think very seriously about whether he takes that increase in his salary?
State.
I think my honourable friend, who is such a strong campaigner for the water sector, makes a very important point, and she puts it very, very well. I consider this pay rise to be outrageous, as does she. It turns out that he's receiving that that pay increase under a scheme that was permitted by the regulator under the regime the Conservatives had in place, and the payment he's getting this year relates to the last year of the Conservative government. Because we've changed the law, no similar payment can be made in future.
Rosie Duffield.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. South East Water's Broad Oak Reservoir in Canterbury, which also serves the Deputy Speaker's constituency, is not due to open until 2033. Will my beleaguered residents and businesses in Canterbury and parts of Whitstable have to put up with the droughts and the leaks in a heat wave which has been unbearable for another 8 years?
Secretary of State.
I thank her for her question. She's quite right to point to the problems that we're experiencing because of the lack of reservoirs. As I already said earlier, we are speeding up the consenting and the building of new reservoirs so that we can have the means to catch the rain when it's falling so that we can use it during drier periods. She refers as well to leaks. The investment that we have secured will also reduce leaks from water pipes so we can help to conserve water for the purposes it is intended.
Samantha Niblett.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I welcome the statement today. I'm incredibly excited, not least because we have the beautiful River Trent that separates my constituency from Staffordshire, which is home to the Staffordshire Swooshers that has members from Derbyshire in it. They frequently have to avoid a Trent tan. But they are constantly extolling the virtues of open water swimming. So does the Secretary of State agree with me that by having cleaner waters we can encourage more great exercise like this to make a healthier and more and improve the well-being of our country?
Secretary of State.
I thank her for her question. The Trent tan is a very alarming and graphic image, but it does capture what has gone wrong with our water sector for so long. The changes we're announcing today will clean up our waterways across the country so that wild swimmers, as well as many other people who like to enjoy our precious rivers, lakes and seas, can get on and enjoy them without the kind of concern that she's alluding to.
Claire Young.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. We know in my Thornbury and Yate constituency last year there were 2,036 sewage spills lasting for a total of 28,360 hours. However, contrary to the Secretary of State's earlier assertion, we do not know the volume of this dumping because it isn't monitored. What steps is the government taking to impose targets to reduce both the duration and volume of individual spills?
Secretary of State.
We are increasing monitoring to 100% of all outlets. I do note that the representatives from the party opposite will often try and take the credit for increasing monitoring. That is a good thing to have done. What's not so good is to just use it to wave hello at the sewage as it floats on by and do nothing about reducing it.
Clive Lewis.
This report feels like a missed opportunity for the government to show the public whose side it's on. It entrenches a privatised model that has already failed economically, environmentally and democratically, with 20 to 50% of bills going on servicing debt. Why, if public ownership is good enough for rail, good enough for GB energy and renewables, is it not good enough for water?
Secretary of State.
I thank him for his question. We have to take a rational and not an ideological approach to tackling this problem. Nationalising the water companies would cost £100 billion. Those are not figures, as I've seen him claim, from the water companies. Those are figures that were provided by officials in my department under the influence of nobody externally. £100 billion. And to pay that money, we would have to take it away from public services like the National Health Service and education in order to hand it to the owners of the companies that have been polluting our waterways. That makes no sense to me, it makes no sense to the public. Frankly, I'm surprised it makes any sense to him.
Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I warmly welcome the Secretary of State's announcement this afternoon that he's going to merge all 4 water regulators into one. However, with a slight caution, it's no good moving the deck chairs around the deck unless you improve the situation. So can he tell this House when he will produce the white paper and what teeth he's going to give this one new super regulator?
Secretary of State.
I welcome his support in principle for what Sir John Cunliffe has proposed and what I've accepted today about merging those 4 regulators, water functions, into one single super regulator. I'll be publishing the white paper, which will have the government's full response during the autumn. And if he would like to peruse the 450-page document that Sir John has provided, he will find 88 separate recommendations in there, many of which will significantly strengthen regulation so that the new regulator can enforce much more harshly against the kind of abuses that water companies got away with in the past.
Josh Newbury.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. On the AFRA Committee, we've heard unbelievable statements from 10 major water companies, but as Sir John Cunliffe has done, we also took a long, hard look at Ofwat, and we found a regulator that is too cosy in dealing with water companies and too bureaucratic in dealing with customers. A weak regulator and fragmented powers have let the public down for far too long. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that whilst the Conservatives failed and the Reform and the Greens make unachievable, unfunded promises, it is this Labour government which will call time on failure and protect bill payers?
Secretary of State.
He makes a very good point. I believe that one of the reasons why the relationship with Ofwat and the water companies became far too cosy is the instruction they received from ministers in the previous government to apply only light touch regulation when what was needed was a firm grip on what was going. It's astonishing they thought it was a good idea to strip out resources and tell the regulator to go soft on the companies, given the abuses that were taking place against the company. That has ended now. We're moving to a model of effective regulation that will protect bill payers and clean up our rivers.
Stephen Flynn.
In his opposition to nationalisation of water just yesterday, the Secretary of State didn't mention the fact that Scottish Water has £113 bills cheaper in Scotland, or the fact that 97% of Scotland's bathing waters meet the quality standards expected. No, what he said of Scottish Water was that pollution in rivers in Scotland is worse than in England. Yet I've consulted the House of Commons library, and when it comes to rivers in England, just 14% meet the quality standards expected, whereas in Scotland it is 58.2%. Trust in politics matters, so he'll correct the record today, won't he?
Secretary of State.
As he correctly points out, Scotland has a nationalised water company under the control, of course, of the SNP government, and water pollution is worse than in England as a result of that circumstance. I will be more than happy to write to him to give him the facts so that he can come back and correct the record in due course.
Gio Mora.
Deputy Speaker. Yesterday I had a lovely swim in the North Sea off Bamburgh Castle, and I would like to thank the Safer Seas and River Service for telling me which beaches to avoid the sewage spills by Northumbria Water. Not all my constituents swim, but they all tell me that the current situation is disgraceful. So they won't be reading a 500-page report. So could the Secretary of State explain to them whether it is A, their fault for not accepting higher bills, as Tory former ministers and Water UK are saying, or whether it is B, the water company's fault for extracting so much more value in the shape of dividends, payment bonuses, and loading the company with debt than they actually put into it, or whether C, it is because water is a natural monopoly and incredibly difficult to regulate effectively in the private sector, or is it B and C?
Secretary of State.
I got slightly confused with her question, if I'm honest. I think she's very brave to go swimming in the North Sea, but I know many people enjoy that. The changes that we are making will bring about effective regulation, appropriate levels of investment, and protect customers from the shocking bill hikes that we saw last year, which was the direct result of 14 years of failure by the Conservative government. I'm sure her constituents will welcome that.
Jess Brownfellow.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Secretary of State for his statement today. Environment Agency data showed a 60% increase in serious pollution incidents last year. So the target of having spills over 5 years would mean nearly 250,000 sewage spills still happening annually in 2030. And when you drink a glass of water, You measure it in how much you drink, not the time it takes to drink it. So to make a real difference to places like Chichester Harbour or the River Lavant in my constituency, will the government look at volume rather than the hours of spills happening?
The target for reduction is using as its baseline the 2024 figure, not the 2021 figure that the previous government was using. That recognises the extent to which sewage pollution has increased between 21 and 24. I want to recognise the scale of the problem and then work to solve that problem from that point. We've announced the most ambitious target for sewage pollution reduction made by any government ever. That is not the end of our ambition. There will be further to go until we restore all of our waterways, including the beautiful Chichester Harbour, back to purity.
Matt Roller.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and could I warmly welcome the Secretary of State's statement and the tough action he's announced today. Mr. Deputy Speaker, residents in my community have suffered appalling problems with sewage pollution in the Thames, the Kennet and many other waterways. They've also suffered interruptions to supply, which went on for hours and hours at the time, and, to make matters worse, they've suffered subsidence from a water leak. Could the Secretary of State advise me how the new Ombudsman will help my residents and I tackle these very, very serious problems?
Secretary of State.
The new Ombudsman will have statutory powers to provide independent and free support to customers who are experiencing the kind of failures that he is describing. There are many others, of course, but previously this was one of the only utilities that did not have that resource available. It will do from now. We've also taken steps in measures we've already introduced to increase compensation for people who have experienced failure by their water company by doubling it at least, and in some cases it goes up tenfold from what it used to be.
Dr. Ben Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The quality of a river is not just the water that goes into it, but also the maintenance of the river itself. And my constituents have been failed over and over again by the Environment Agency in terms of maintaining our waterways. Given his enthusiasm for breaking apart quangos, will he consider bringing powers away from the EA so that we can manage our rivers properly, effectively?
Secretary of State.
He makes an important point, but I would gently remind him that it was his government that cut resources to the Environment Agency by 50%, and that may well have had something to do with the fact that the people were no longer there to go and enforce against the kind of failings he's talking about.
Marsha de Cordova.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and can I warmly welcome the Secretary of State's statement. I know my constituents in Battersea will be relieved after 14 years of Tory failure and inaction. As in Battersea, water pollution from toxic sewage discharge is a persistent problem, all while their bills are being hiked up. So I welcome this government taking the necessary steps and introducing reforms to the water sector and also protecting my constituents. But can he say just a little bit more about when he wants to bring forward the water bill legislation? And I'm sure he agrees with me that he is taking long overdue action.
Secretary of State.
Yep, I thank her for her question. I know Battersea very well. It's a very beautiful area, and I'm aware of the problems with pollution, and of course she knows all too well the concerns that her residents have about escalating bills as a result of the failure of the previous government to get a grip on the water sector. We will be publishing the white paper and launching the consultation this autumn. That will follow through with legislation in the first half of this Parliament.
Manuela Pertigella.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, my constituents have faced an increase in their water bills without seeing an improvement in the dumping of sewage in our rivers and brooks and no upgrading infrastructure. What assurances can the government provide that the increases in bills will not end up in the pockets of water company bosses?
Secretary of State.
Thank you for a question, and I hope she will be reassured by the fact that I have ring-fenced customers' money so that it can no longer be diverted for payment on bonuses and dividends in the way that was commonplace under the previous government. It will only be spent on what it was intended for, and that is investing in better water infrastructure. If that doesn't happen, it will be refunded back to customers.
Catherine Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Over 60 Year 4 pupils from Walter Evans Primary School in Derby wrote to me and the Secretary of State worried about sewage dumping and plastic pollution in our rivers. Can I thank the Secretary of State for his clear commitment that this government will halve pollution in our rivers by 2030? And does he agree with me that had the Conservatives taken action of this kind when they came into power 14 years ago, my 9-year-old constituents would have known cleaner rivers all of their lives?
Secretary of State.
Can I first of all pay tribute to the young people from her constituency? Young people, of course, famously care about the environment, and they are devastated to see the scale of pollution in our waterways that she is describing. Of course, we've taken all of these steps and put in place the building blocks for change within a year of winning the general election. The previous government had 14 years, and they could have done exactly the same thing in any one of those 14 years. But as is shown by the absence of the Shadow Secretary of State today, they just didn't care enough.
Adrian Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. This government-commissioned review looks at how to tinker with the Conservatives' failed privatised monopoly system. But the truth is that it's a moribund model that has resulted in billions being paid out to shareholders, billions of debt being loaded up, and neglecting crucial infrastructure, meaning that sewage is regularly pumped into our rivers and seas. So does the Secretary of State accept that the cost of this failure must be part of the calculation in determining the cost of bringing water into public hands where it belongs, and that figures like 100 billion are grossly inflated by those who don't think the water industry should pay for this greed and terrible mismanagement of our water systems?
Well, I'm afraid the Green Party's proposals would mean paying £100 billion of taxpayers' money to the owners of the water companies, and that money would have to be taken away from the National Health Service. It would take years to unpick the current models of ownership, during which time pollution in our rivers would get much worse, not better. And we know it doesn't work, because you've only got to look north of the border, where the nationalised model in Scotland has worse pollution, not less. So he's talking about cutting the National Health Service, giving £100 billion to the owners of the current water companies, and making pollution far worse. Doesn't sound very green to me.
John Trickett.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Action to tackle the water companies' failure on long-standing systemic problems is much needed in my constituency of Rugby, where I've been working with residents in Brownsover who have faced repeated burst pipes, with some families forced to move out multiple times and not receiving the proper value of damaged property. Severn Trent has now given a timetable for action on the infrastructure, so I welcome the introduction of a new statutory water ombudsman to, as he says, put the public at the heart of water regulation. Does the Minister agree with me that where the Conservatives failed the British consumer, this Labour government will protect them and put people before profit?
Secretary of State.
I thank my honourable friend. He is a vocal champion of his constituents in Rugby, and he's quite right to demand more compensation when outages happen, and also an ombudsman. That is what this government will provide, so that we can provide better support to customers who are let down by the water companies. We are on the side of bill payers and the environment. The previous government was on the side of none of these.
John Lamond.
Was treated just over 58,000 times from Scottish sewer overflows. More than half of wild swimming spots in Scotland contain unsafe levels of sewage. So, whatever model the government decides to adopt for the regulation of the water industry in England, can he assure me they won't follow what the Scottish government has done in terms of their failed model?
I agree with him completely. He's accurately pointing to the failures both of the SNP government in Scotland and the nationalised model, which does not fix the problems.
Let's try again. John Trickett.
I thought he said John Trickett.
Thank you very much, sir. Can I, first of all, say that it's correct to analyse the failure of the regulators and to seek to replace them, but I rather think the Secretary of State will be coming back, or one of his successors, to discuss ownership structures. After all, in Yorkshire Water, where we were the first to pioneer hose pipe bans this year, the pipes are leaking a bit like a tetanus teabag, and over 95 billion litres of water was leaked by Yorkshire Water in last year alone. Now, what does the Secretary of State envisage if the new regulatory system fails and the ownership structures continue to produce the kind of problems we've been seeing up and down the country. Will he have reserve powers to take action against the owners of the companies themselves, probably to remove them?
Secretary of State.
Well, there's a system in place for if licences are breached for special administration. But the reason we're strengthening regulation and changing the regulator are so that we can prevent those kind of failures. And the £104 billion investment that we secured at the end of last year will help to upgrade pipes so we can reduce the amount of water that is leaking out of the system, and it will pay to build and dig out those new reservoirs that will catch the rain so there's a supply of water in the drier periods.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I understand the points the Secretary of State makes about the levels of pollution and damage to our natural world and environment by the water industry over the past 30 years. And I understand the need for regulation. But does he not understand that he hasn't dealt with a fundamental problem, which is that in the future there's still going to be private enterprise making money out of a public water supply? Wouldn't it be better to bring it into public ownership and set a share price based on the costs of pollution, the executive pay that's been exorbitant and the bonuses that have been exorbitant, so that the public as a whole control their water supply and we're no longer left to the vagaries of the private sector and all the devastation and damage they've caused over the past 30 years?
Secretary of State.
I thank him for his question. This government is going to do what works than what is ideologically correct. We are not going to strip £100 billion out of public services like the National Health Service to give it to the owners of the water companies who have polluted our waterways. We're not going to wait years to get investment in while pollution in our waterways gets even worse. And we are not going to let the pipes deteriorate to such an extent that bill payers would then be hit with even higher bills in the future. I'm going to act in the way that will deliver us lower bills and clean water in the fastest way possible.
Clive Efford.
Mr Deputy Speaker, what's happened to our waterways is a national disgrace, and the state that the Conservatives left our rivers, our lakes and the seas around Britain, it really epitomised what they did to public services in general. But does my right honourable friend agree with me that what's been lacking over the last 35 years of privatisation is a proper consumer representative that's actually protected the customers? And will he give it a guarantee that that will be front and centre of the new regulator?
Secretary of State.
I think he makes a very important point, and in Sir John Cunliffe's final report today, he does make recommendations for how customers can be put at the heart of the new model. There are several recommendations. I won't go through all of them, but one of them is to set up these new regional entities where customers will have direct representation in taking decisions about how water infrastructure investment will be spent to tackle the priorities that they have in their own areas.
Cameron Thomas.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. My constituent campaigners at Safe Haven and Tewkesbury Friends of the Earth will be delighted to see that at length the government has implemented a core Liberal Democrat manifesto pledge in the abolition of Ofwat. Will he now go further and implement a second pledge, put those campaigners on the board of Severn Trent so that they can hold the water company to account and continue to show my constituents that Liberal Democrat pressure pays off?
Secretary of State.
Well, I do welcome the Liberal Democrats' conversion because, of course, when they were in government and when the Water Minister was indeed a Liberal Democrat, they commissioned a report that found there was no need to change the model of regulation.
John MacDonald.
Can I just say that many people will find it incredulous that Cunliffe was not even allowed to look at public ownership. And can I also say to him mildly that the £100 billion he cites has largely been refuted by independent bodies and economists. But can I raise this issue with him? Way back in 2014, I raised the example of Northumbrian Water and the use of various complicated devices for tax avoidance. And that became endemic within the industry. Could we have a report on the water company's role in tax avoidance on this massive scale, that we can then look at what further action can be taken against them?
Secretary of State.
Well, I agree with him on one point, that we should be cracking down on tax avoidance, and it's always worth looking into that. But on his earlier point, I'm much more interested in the purity of our water than the purity of our ideology. the figure of £100 billion as the cost of buying out the water companies, if any government wanted to nationalise them, was provided by officials in my department with no external influence on them. This country cannot afford it, and we also can't afford the worsening of sewage in our waterways during the years it would take to unpick the current model of ownership.
Dr. Andrew Mearson.
The Minister said he wanted 9 more reservoirs. Can you say how many of that number are reservoirs already under construction or in the planning process, when we can expect to see them, and who will pay? And is it his view that Sir John Cunliffe's uplift of more than 30% in real terms for water payers' bill will be covering the cost?
Secretary of State.
I'll be more than happy to write to him with the details he is asking for, but as I've said earlier, we're also speeding up the planning process, treating reservoirs as nationally significant infrastructure, so that I, as the Secretary of State, will take the consenting decision so we can do it in months rather than the years or even decades it's been taking up till now.
Alison Gardner.
The village of Upper Team frequently suffers flooding and sewage outflows. One of the reasons is that the antiquated mains water infrastructure cannot adequately cope with the increased amount of new housing developments, even when the developer meets all the required mitigations. Recommendation 3 in the report states that a comprehensive systems planning framework should be introduced and consider regional spatial development priorities that may impact the water system, such as housing developments. Does the Minister agree with me that with the government's plan to build 1.5 million homes, it is vital that privatised water companies ensure that they can adequately meet systems demands without sewage dumping, prioritising this over profiteering?
She makes a very important point because, of course, water infrastructure is critical for housing development, and economic growth in every single region of the country. I've accepted in principle today one of Sir John's recommendations that will allow us to align for the first time water infrastructure investment and spatial planning so that those homes and factories can be built faster to the benefit of local people.
Victoria Collins.
Deputy Speaker, I very much welcome the proposals and the announcement today as a step forward of tackling the sewage crisis, but of course the details will be in the delivery, and that's where the importance is, especially as in Harpenden and Berkhamsted, the River Vere, a precious chalk stream, has had nearly 5,000 hours of sewage in the last year. Some of that was 3,000 hours non-stop. Now, we don't know the volume, but we know it's terrible. Will the Secretary of State meet with me to see how the proposals put forward can help prioritise the upgrade of this Mark 8 sewage works that is desperately needed? Thank you.
Secretary of State.
Thank you for a question, and I know the River Vere very well because I used to walk over a bridge, cross it every day on my way to school while I was growing up. I would be very happy to make sure that she has an appropriate meeting with the Minister to discuss her concerns.
Anna Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I was very pleased to see that today's report, I believe, has got a picture of the Bingley Five Rise locks in my constituency on the front cover, so thank you for that. The creaking and leaking water infrastructure, the current drought restrictions and sewage dumping in our rivers, like the Aire and Wharf, are evidence of a failing industry. And indeed the failures of previous Tory water minister sitting on the front bench. I do welcome today's report and also give credit to the campaign groups like the Ilkley Clean River Group for the People's Water Commission. It's right that the Secretary of State in his response has said that he will abolish Ofwat and strengthen oversight and regulation. But Yorkshire Water has a labyrinth of holding companies that have built up debt, taken out dividends and interest payments, put up customer bills and failed to invest in upgrades. So will the Secretary of State agree with me that it's time for radical action, not only to merge the regulators, but also to restructure failing companies like Yorkshire Water?
State.
Yeah. Thank you for a question. I can't take credit for the picture, of course. That's to Sir John. I will join her in crediting the campaign groups who have done such a fantastic job at keeping this issue at the top of the political agenda. Sir John makes proposals in his report about those labyrinthine structures that she's talking about. We need clarity, we need transparency, and that is what we will now work towards.
Iqbal Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In 2001 to 23, over 4,600 incidents of sewage overflow in Dewsbury and Batley, amounting to over 28,000 hours.
The bills for my constituents and those of Yorkshire Water customers have gone up 40% in the last 5 years and nearly 30% in the last 12 months. £84 billion has been taken in dividends by all the water companies in the UK, with £74 billion of that saddled onto the companies themselves. So what steps is the Secretary of State taking to reduce the bills of my constituents and the residents of the whole of the United Kingdom, and what steps will he take to claw back that £84 billion so it can be invested to fix the pipes?
He makes a very important point, and I'm grateful to him for that. His constituents, just like people right across the country, are paying bills. Last year were forced to pay the price of 14 years of Conservative failure because they allowed the companies to pay millions out in dividends and in bonuses when they should have invested it in upgrading the infrastructure. I've ring-fenced customers' money, so it will now only be spent on the purposes for which it was intended. Otherwise, it will be returned to customers.
Lee Ingham.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. On Crooked Bridge Road in my constituency of Stafford, Eccleshall and the Villages, it's taken the County Council far too long to accept responsibility for faulty pipes. The buck's been passed between them and Severn Trent. And the investigative work won't even start till August the 1st. So will the Commission consider looking into intervention in cases like this, where the buck is repeatedly being passed back and forth, to ensure that urgent works can get underway?
She makes an important point. Buck passing should not be allowed to continue. We're moving to new regional structures that will bring together the regulators, customers, advocacy groups, businesses and local authorities. It's a place where those kind of issues can be resolved.
Helen Maguire.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. We welcome the Government's commitment to cutting water bills by 50% in the next 3 years. However, looking at the stark increase that consumers have paid because of the failed water company finances, this will not touch the sides, especially for the most vulnerable customers. Will the Secretary of State do what Conservative ministers failed to and commit to implementing a single social tariff for water bills to help eliminate water poverty?
Secretary of State.
Thank you for that question. Of course, social tariffs already exist within the individual water companies. So John has made recommendations about that. We will consult on that later in the year and then take decisions as we bring forward legislation in the new year.
Luke Eghurst.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. It's a shame that no one's here from the Reform Party to explain their proposals for the water companies, and perhaps they might have managed to be more eloquent than their leader was on TV yesterday. Their unfunded spending commitment would send mortgages through the roof and take money away from the NHS, schools, police and our armed forces. Can the Secretary of State tell us how much he thinks that Reform's proposals would cost, and comment on whether he thinks they have a clue about this policy area that they can't even be bothered to be in the chamber for?
Secretary of State.
Well, I agree with him. It's a shame that none of them have turned up, but perhaps it's not surprising because they didn't bother mentioning this issue in their manifesto either. But we did hear at the weekend that their leader, the Honourable Member for Clacton, wants to spend £50 billion of taxpayers' money to hand to the owners of the current water companies. Now, if you add that to their existing £80 billion of unfunded commitments, it comes to £130 billion. By my reckoning, that's almost double the amount that Liz Truss bet and lost on the economy when she crashed it and sent mortgages and prices and rents skyrocketing. They want to double down on the bad bet.
Greg Smith.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'm genuinely all ears for any practical steps that can be taken to build on the Environment Act to clean up our waterways. But can I pick up the Secretary of State's comments on the role, as he put it, citizen scientists and local communities in the process going forward? In my constituency, there are water heroes like Doug Kennedy, who I joined in Nether Winchendon testing the River Tame a few weeks ago, who has decades of real local knowledge on our local waterways. Likewise, the volunteers of the River Tame Conservation Trust. That is a powerhouse of local knowledge which will be replicated up and down the country. So rather than just involving them as consultees, can the Secretary of State reflect on how they get properly locked into local solutions to cleaning up our waterways?
Yeah.
Secretary of State.
First of all, I support what he said about the Environment Act. That was a worthwhile piece of legislation from the previous government. I also support what he's saying about making sure that people at the level of their own community can have more involvement, and I will certainly take that on board as we work through the consultation.
Gareth Snell.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. My constituents in Stoke-on-Trent want to know that their drinking water is safe and they want their waterways like the River Trent to be clean and looked after. I welcome all the commitments that the Secretary of State has made today about the new regulatory body that will be set up, but he will know that the power of a regulator isn't just in the power that it has, but the ability to enforce them. Could he say a bit more from the dispatch box about how he sees this new regulator having the resources to enforce the new rules that he's proposing? Because it needs to be more than the sum of the parts of its predecessors, because they have failed and so many of my constituents have seen it.
I thank him for his question. It's a very important one. We've introduced the principle already of the polluter pays. So where there are successful prosecutions and enforcement action against water companies, they pay the price for that enforcement. That funds the additional resource that allows further investigations and, if necessary, prosecutions to go ahead. What a contrast to the previous government slashing those resources in half.
Sarah Olney.
Mr Deputy Speaker, from Saturday night to Monday morning, a mains burst on Richmond Hill in my constituency went unattended, resulting in residents being left without a gas supply as water leaked into the gas pipeline. Burst pipes, sewage dumping following storm overflows has now become customary. Last year alone, 119 hours worth of sewage was discharged into rivers and waterways in my constituency. Thames Water have been allowed to get away with these negligent and environmentally hazardous practices for far too long, while Ofwat had stood by and watched. Earlier this year, an FOI uncovered that Ofwat have not recouped a single penny from the financial sanctions it has placed on Thames Water. Now that the government has finally realised that Ofwat must be replaced, will the Minister set out a timeline for when the review's recommendation for a new regulator will be implemented?
I agree with much of what she's just said. Her constituents are experiencing what constituents of members across the House are experiencing right across the country. It's not acceptable and it will not continue. We will be publishing the white paper in the autumn. There will be a consultation alongside that and we intend to then move to legislation during the first half of this Parliament.
Claire Hazelgrove.
Speaker. Cleaning up our rivers, lakes and seas could not be more important. And having served on the Water Special Measures Bill Committee, I was glad that our government acted so quickly to begin this vital work, and I welcome these further measures announced today. Could my right honourable friend please confirm that he will be bringing in these next changes as quickly as possible?
Secretary of State.
Absolutely, I agree with her. It's very important that these changes are brought in as quickly as possible. It is a national scandal, the state of our water sector, both the levels of pollution in our waterways, but also the unacceptable bill hikes that customers experienced last year. We cannot allow things to continue. We will move with the greatest possible speed, and I'm sure she will hold the fire to our feet.
David Reid.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. As the Secretary of State will know and the Water Minister will know, sewage is a major issue in my constituency of Exmouth and Exeter East. Now, as we've heard, this government plans to build 1.5 million new homes and tens of thousands are due to be put into my area. Understandably, lots of people are very concerned about this, that South West Water will not keep pace with development. So what guarantees can the Secretary of State give to ensure that South West Water do put the required infrastructure in?
Secretary of State.
It's a very important point that he's making. The recommendation that I'm accepting today will create new regional structures where water infrastructure investment will align with spatial planning so that we can guarantee in the future. However, that legislation is not yet in place, so I've set up within the Department a Water Infrastructure Board that is making sure that the water companies are putting in place the infrastructure where the opportunities for housing development and other forms of economic growth can take place.
Jim Dixon.
Deputy Speaker, can I welcome the Minister's statement today? Residents in Dartford will be impressed by the ambitious commitment of the government to halve sewage pollution in our lakes, rivers and seas within 5 years. They've had to put up with the poor performance of Thames Water for too long. Does the Minister agree with me that unlike the Conservatives, who had 14 years to fix this, and the Reform Party, who appear to have no ideas as to how to fix this, that this government, when it says that it's going to clean up our water and protect the British bill payer, it means it?
Secretary of State.
He's quite right to point to a situation where the situation with sewage and rising bills got worse every year for 14 years under the previous government. We are turning the tide on Tory sewage today, and over the next 5 years, residents in Dartford and elsewhere will see reductions in sewage until we meet our target.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Secretary of State very much for his statement yesterday in the Laura Kuenssberg show that the Minister or the Secretary of State showed the positivity in relation to the programme and strategy that he's brought forward. The steps that are taken certainly make sense. However, in Northern Ireland, we are still publicly owned and still have the same difficulties that government are seeking to combat here. So my question to the Minister is a simple one. The required changes to infrastructure here to give more responsibility and to output the changes that are made. Can I ask the Minister, Secretary of State very much, would he do me a favour, speak to the Minister, the relevant Minister, that's Andrew Muir, at the Northern Ireland Assembly to ensure that what's going to happen here with the positivity that is shown, that we can have the same results in Northern Ireland and take care of some of our difficulties. Thank you.
I thank him for his question, and I speak regularly with my counterparts in Northern Ireland, and I'm more than happy to convey his message to them the next time I speak to them.
Julie Menz.
As someone who enjoys swimming in Cumbria's lakes, rivers and tarns, I welcome the Secretary of State's ambitious commitment to halving the sewage pollution in them. Can he say more about how, unlike the Conservatives who did nothing for 14 years and who, unlike Reform's moon on a stick approach to reform, that when he says he has a plan to protect water consumers and protect water users, that he actually means it?
Secretary of State.
I thank her for her question. I think voters want to see action, not just words. That's why I'm so proud that that £104 billion of investment that we've secured started to be spent in April. It's already being invested. People will see the change as a result of this. That will help to restore their confidence and their trust in politics so shattered after 14 years of the Conservatives.
Tessa Munt.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Could the Secretary of State publish exactly the data that quantifies the amount that's lost in leaks, so that the public can understand exactly how much water and their hard-earned money is lost? And it will help the water companies to actually focus on fixing their pipes. It's no good just building another reservoir, as they might do in my area, if the water just continues to be lost en route to where it's needed.
Secretary of State.
She's right, transparency is always very important. I believe that data is available. I'm happy to write to her to direct her to it so she can share the information with her constituents.
Alison Hume.
Deputy Speaker, for far too long, families in Scarborough and Whitby have been paying the price of failure. Yorkshire Water was recently forced to pay out £40 million due to serious failings, yet a few days later, customers' bills rose by almost a third. Could my right honourable friend say a little more to reassure my constituents that a national social tariff is now on the cards for those on low incomes?
Secretary of State.
Well, we always want to support those who are on lower incomes and those who may be experiencing water poverty. Nobody should be worried about their water bill because their income is too low. Social tariffs already exist in every region. We will be consulting on the proposal for a national social tariff that the Independent Water Commission has proposed in their final report.
Ayub Khan.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Citizens and families in my city of Birmingham are currently paying an average of £400 a month for their water bill. That's looking to increase to £800 by the end of this Parliament term. We know that cost of living is spiralling out of control. Whilst families struggle with cost of living, big bonuses are being taken by chief executives and shareholders. Would the Secretary of State consider bringing water back into public ownership, given that more than 60% of the British public are asking for that?
State.
Well, nationalising the water companies, as I already said, would cost £100 billion, money that we'd have to strip out of the National Health Service and education in order to hand it to the people who own the water companies that have been polluting our waterways. It's not an idea that commends itself to me, I'm afraid.
Josh Fenton-Glynn.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In Calder Valley, Mr Deputy Speaker, I beg your pardon. In Calder Valley, we have seen near floods and a hose pipe ban. Meanwhile, in 2024, Yorkshire has seen 68,186 sewage spills, lasting over 430,000 hours.
Shameful.
Does this mean an end to a useless regulator which is presiding over a failing industry?
Secretary of State.
Well, the answer to that one's very quick. Yes, it does.
Callum Miller.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I draw the House's attention to my register of interest as an office holder in the APPG for water. Last year, at the first Prime Minister's questions of the session, I was able to draw the Prime Minister's attention to the fact that Thames Water had pumped sewage into the River Evenlode for 2,600 hours in the previous year. I called then for the scrapping of Ofwat, and I'm delighted that the Secretary of State has listened to my party and so many campaigners by doing so today. However, Thames has pumped a further 1,000 hours worth of sewage into the same river in the intervening period, and that is why the Evenlode Catchment Project has had to take it into citizen science to try and measure those figures. The Secretary of State has set out that he wishes to halve the number of spills, but can I ask him why he is not seeking to halve the volume and quantity, for it's that which is killing our rivers?
Secretary of State.
Our target is the most ambitious target for sewage reduction put forward by any government in our country's history, and I'm very proud of that. It is an important stepping stone to restoring our rivers, lakes and seas to the good health and purity that many of us will remember from when we were younger.
Polly Billington.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I welcome my right honourable friend's statement, which is detailed, practical and focused on outcomes, in stark contrast to the ludicrous back-of-a-fag packet policy of the member for Clacton, who claimed yesterday simultaneously that he would nationalise half the water industry without knowing how much it would cost, and also that he would bring in more business people to run it. The people who have been free to run up debts, force up bills, dump sewage, leave pipes broken, reservoirs dry and our own lakes, seas and rivers filthy, which of course does include the Chief Executive of Southern Water, Lawrence Gosden, who, as my honourable friend for Hastings pointed out, has a £1.4 million pay package that he should hand back. Can he tell me, however, how this government plans to address those who say these proposals don't go far enough and will still leave our precious water, lakes and seas in the hands of shysters and spivs?
Well, she's quite right in pointing out that the honourable member for Clacton, by his own admission, has no idea and no clue about this issue. She's quite right too that these proposals are detailed. Sir John has provided a 450-page report with 88 separate recommendations that we will be consulting on. When we implement a final version of that, it will be the biggest overhaul to our water sector in over a generation. We will reset it from top to bottom, so we have a water sector that works on the side of customers and the environment and investors, rather than the serial failure we witnessed under the previous government.
Thank you, Shanker.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Derwent runs through the heart of Derby, but thanks to the polluting water companies and the Tories opposite, its health is in serious doubt. Can the Minister reassure my constituents that this Labour government is committed to taking the robust action needed desperately to restore the river and preserve it for our communities to enjoy safely?
Secretary of State.
Thank you for this question. The state of the River Derwent is, alas, seen in so many other rivers, lakes and seas up and down the country. That is why we are launching today a water revolution to completely reset the water sector from top to bottom so the failings of the past can never happen again.
Alice MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. Norfolk is home to many beautiful beaches and rivers, but like many people are concerned about the state of their waters. The Cow Tower Dippers in Norwich are applying for designated swim status that will mean Anglian Water is obliged to monitor their water. That's one specific example, but can the Secretary of State expand on how the reforms will help local groups hold water companies to account and speed up processes like that?
Secretary of State.
Thank you for her question. By monitoring every single outlet and by making that visible to people right across the country, campaigners and residents, we will open up the system to far greater transparency than has been the case previously.
Tom Rutland.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Last week it was revealed that the Chief Executive of Southern Water was awarded an egregious, enormous pay rise worth hundreds of thousands of pounds, despite the company continuing to oversee sewage spills and infrastructure failures affecting my constituents in East Worthing and Shoreham. Does the Minister agree with me that water bosses shouldn't profit from overseeing catastrophic failure?
Secretary of State.
I absolutely agree with him about that point, and I share his sentiment that this payment is outrageous. It was possible because it is part of a scheme that was permitted under the regulatory regime allowed by the previous government. We've changed the law. It won't happen again.
Douglas McAllister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I commend the Minister for the action contained within this statement to hold water companies to account, not least the new regulator and ombudsman. Scotland's widespread water pollution challenges are far greater than England's, particularly sewage-related pollution in our rivers and on our beaches. Scottish Water is publicly owned, but Scottish ministers are failing to take the problem seriously with inadequate monitoring. Does the Minister agree that Scotland needs to take similar urgent action, which only a new direction under Scottish Labour can deliver?
Well, I do agree with him. We had an example earlier during this session of the complacency with which the SNP treat these kind of issues. There is only one chance now in Scotland for a reset, and that is the election of a Scottish Labour government in Holyrood to work, as we are doing, to clean up pollution from our rivers, lakes and seas.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. My constituents of Bangor-Aberconwy have been hit by a massive rise in bills, which is a real kick in the teeth, given that thousands of them were without water after a major burst earlier this year. So can I warmly welcome the Secretary of State's commitment to devolving the economic regulation of water to Wales, which would allow the Welsh Government to move forward with the Commission's recommendation in terms of having an independent economic regulator from Wales. So would my honourable friend agree with me that this demonstrates the value of two Labour governments working together for the bill payers in Wales?
Secretary.
I do agree with her, and I understand that the Welsh Deputy First Minister will be laying a statement before the Senedd today, giving his comments on Sir John's report.
Nashaba Khan.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Secretary of State for everything he's doing to transform water companies across our country. My residents in Gillingham and Rainham have suffered astronomical hikes in their bills and have also been exposed to pollution and sewage dumps in our water. Yet the Chief Executive of